part 2 of me explaining the entire Bridgerton universe so y'all don't have to read 8 books. It'll make life a little easier for you. I got your backs. In this video, we're going to cover books 3 and 4, which are Benedict and Colin's story. If you are wanting to know what happens in Colin's story before or even after season 3 of Bridgerton comes out, here's the timestamp for Colin's story. Y'all can jump right there if you want to, but I recommend not skipping Benedict's because his is literally a fairy tale. And it's a fun one. So let's jump right in with Benedict's story. This is an offer from the gentleman. We're going right into the prologue. The prologue is giving us all our background information on Sophie. We learn that Sophie is an illegitimate child of the Earl of Penwood, and when she was very, very young, her grandmother dropped her off at his front door. She was hiding in the bushes, by the way, to make sure that he was going to accept her. He opens the door to find Sophie there. She's bundled up and there's a letter with her. He reads the letter, immediately burns it, takes Sophie in as his own because she is his kid, by the way, just illegitimate. And so he is claiming to everyone that she is the daughter of one of his good family friends that happened to pass away, so he is now claiming her as his own. Also, these characters do not have actors attached to them yet, so I made them up for the purpose of this video. Earl of Penwood, we love him, and so he is going to be Colin Firth from the What a Girl Wants era. We love. And then she's Cinderella, because duh. I'll explain the rest as we get to them. The Earl of Penwood, as I said, he took Sophie in. He made a nursery up for her. He made sure that she had a governess and was getting all of her lessons so that when she was of age, she could debut and eventually find a husband and have a dowry and everything like this to grow up in society. So he's really taking care of her. And everything is going so well for Sophie. She loves the life that she's having until Earl of Penwood gets married. And who does he marry? Lady Penwood, also Countess. She has a really hard name to pronounce. We're not doing that today, but just know that I've casted her as evil stepmother. She also has 2 daughters from a different marriage, and we have Posy and Rosamond. He never claims them as his kids though, like he does not adopt them in any way, shape, or form, and so they do not take on the Penwood last name. Keep that in mind for later, by the way. Sophie is so excited over the fact that she's about to have 2 new sisters that are the exact same age as her, and she cannot wait for them to do all their lessons together, to play together, just to grow up and be a family. That is all Sophie has ever wanted. The day that she meets Lady Penwood and her children, they are not nice. They are not nice to her in any way, shape, or form. Sophie's just thinking, oh, like maybe they're just getting adjusted, no big deal. I'll see them tomorrow during our lessons. She goes to show up to her lessons and she sees that Lady Penwood has made sure that Posy and Rosamond are getting their lessons done separately from Sophie, that they should not be involved or around Sophie at all. It gets way worse than this, just so everyone's aware, so hold on tight. It's giving Cinderella. Hold on tight. Lady Penwood was not the only one being rude to Sophie. She had both of her daughters, Posy and Rosamond, be extremely rude to Sophie. Posy was a little nicer. She literally went forward and told Sophie, like, hey, my mom is telling me to be mean to you. That's what's happening right here. But Rosamond, horrid. Literally went as far as pulling Sophie's hair when she wasn't looking and laughing at her at every chance she could get. Obviously, they've been cast as the evil stepsisters. Obviously. This is how the next 4 years of Sophie's life went. She was still treated as if she was one of them. She was getting lessons. Though they were separate from Posy and Rosamond, she was still getting her lessons in. She was still in beautiful dresses and beautiful gowns. He still loved her. He did. Whether anyone wants to say it or not, he definitely did. But after these 4 years, he suddenly passed, and the Earl of Penwood was no more. Mind you, he passed away at the age of 40, and so our Countess is shook because they had not had time to produce an heir. So he has no child that he has claimed at all. The only child he has is illegitimate Sophie that literally nobody knows about. No one truly knows that she is illegitimate because he burned the only piece of evidence that said it. Solicitors kept coming around to Lady Penwood telling them, like, you did not produce an heir. You've got to go. Like, this belongs to the new Earl of Penwood. And so they tried to move her. She kept saying, I could be with child. I could be with child. We don't know yet. I could be. A month has passed. Solicitors come back, she ain't pregnant. We all know she's not pregnant. And so they have all been moved to a different home. They are also presented with the Earl of Penwood's will, and so we get to see what he has left for everybody. We see that the Earl has left money for all of his servants, which, so kind, so amazing. He also left substantial dowries, not just for his 2 stepdaughters, but for Sophie as well. He also stipulates in the will that Lady Penwood will make £2,000 a month, which literally her jaw is dropping. She's like, that's it? That is all he's leaving me? This makes no sense. And then she reads the fine print. We have the big word, unless. So she will make £2,000 a month unless she decides to take in Sophie, house Sophie, until Sophie is 20 years old. If she decides to do this, she will be making £6,000 a month. He does not stipulate whether she has to be nice to her or whether she needs to treat her as if she were a child of theirs or anything like that. So Sophie essentially becomes a maid. She is treated exactly like a maid. She no longer is given classes. She no longer has a governess, and she no longer gets to wear her beautiful, stunning gowns that she grew up having. Lady Pinwood also told Sophie that the Earl left her nothing in his will. Absolutely nothing, which we already know is false because he left her a substantial dowry. Learning that the Earl left her nothing really makes Sophie realize that no one's truly ever loved her. He just took her in because he had to, which we know is false because we know that he left her a substantial dowry, but Sophie has no clue because the Countess decided to not tell anyone this information at all. And that concludes our prologue. Let's go into chapter 1. We are starting off with our Queen, Lady Whistledown, who is informing us that the Bridgertons are hosting a masquerade ball. This ball, since it is hosted by the Bridgertons, is the most elite and exclusive ball of the season, and so everyone is crossing all their fingers hoping that they are getting an invite. Also, all the mothers of this season are badgering Colin and Benedict around because they are still unwed. That means that there are 2 eligible Bridgertons for someone's daughter to eventually marry. So Colin and Benedict really don't like their lives right now. But let's actually go back into our story, shall we? In chapter 1, we are still following Sophie, and we learn that Posey and Rosamond were invited to the Bridgerton event. Obviously, Sophie was not, because no one really knows who she is, and she has been treated like a maid for forever. She's also over the age of 20. And so Sophie is sitting here being so confused why the Countess has let her stay in this house since she knows she is hated, but she's really not going to bring it up to anybody whatsoever because she doesn't want to get kicked to the curb, but she is past the age that the will stipulated she had to be. The Countess is so excited that both of her daughters got an invitation to the Bridgerton ball because she wholeheartedly believes that Rosamond will marry a Bridgerton. Not Posey, of course, because who in the world would want to marry Posey? She definitely favors Rosamond. You will see this going forward. She believes that Rosamond will marry a Bridgerton, specifically Benedict, but any Bridgerton will do. Sophie's getting Posey and Rosamond ready for the ball when Rosamond says something really mean to Sophie, and Sophie doesn't say anything back, but she looks up and she sees Miss Gibbons, who I actually do not have a picture for, but imagine her as fairy godmother. That is her vibe. She sees Miss Gibbons, and for some reason Miss Gibbons gives her a wink. And Sophie's like, that is so odd. Why are you winking at me? Once Sophie gets the 3 ladies into their carriage, they are now on the way to their masquerade ball for the evening. Sophie's like, beautiful, I have nothing else to do for the night. No one has to bother me. This is amazing. Until Miss Gibbons runs up to her, literally grabs her by the arm and is like, hurry, we must go. We don't have a lot of time. Sophie obviously follows Miss Gibbons, and Miss Gibbons takes her upstairs and opens up a trunk for her. This trunk is full of all of Sophie's late grandmother's beautiful gowns, like drop dead gorgeous gowns. Sophie is so confused why they're looking at this trunk full of all these gowns. She's never even seen the trunk before. Miss Gibbons looks at her and says, you, Miss Sophie Maria Beckett, are going to the ball. Cinderella. A lot of these dresses are outdated, but they end up finding this gorgeous shimmery silver gown that has a pearl bodice on it. Like, literally sounds stunning. That is the winner, but they can't find any shoes for her to wear. They go through both of the daughters' closet, learn that they don't have the same size foot, and then Miss Gibbons says, you know what, your dress is gonna be so long, no one's gonna see your shoes anyway, let's go to the Countess's room. Which Sophie is thinking in her head, like, this is a bad idea. This is a bad idea, but also I need shoes. I need shoes and I'm gonna be able to go, because why the heck would I not be able to go? So they take a pair of her shoes. Please make a mental note of this situation, because it's gonna come back later. Miss Gibbons also finds a pair of long white gloves for Sophie to wear within this trunk, and the trunk has her grandmother's initials on them. It is monogrammed with SLG. Even though the gloves are outdated, Sophie is so excited to be wearing something that belongs to a member of her family. Miss Gibbons tells Sophie, now you need to go outside, go to the carriage, the footman will take you to the ball, but you have to be back by midnight. You have to be back to the footman by midnight or you will not beat anyone home. Let's pan to Benedict and see what he's up to, shall we? At the ball, Benedict is literally having the worst time of his life. Everyone is hounding him and instead of saying like, hi Benedict, Benedict, how are you doing? What's up, Benedict? They're saying, are you the second or third Bridgerton brother? Which Bridgerton brother are you? He looks like he's the third. No, he's giving the vibe of the second. He's definitely the second. They don't even refer to him by his name. He is a number to them. He is so over tonight. He is so over everyone, just comparing him to every single person in his family, and he loves his family. He would do anything for his family, but he wants to be his own person. He wants to be Benedict, point blank, period. Violet is really wanting all of her sons to eventually get married, and so she sees that he's not really doing anything during this ball. She comes up to Benedict and says, hey, I think you should really dance with either Prudence or Philippa Featherington. That's what you should do right now. He's like, oh no, mother, I will not be doing that. But you know what? I will dance with Penelope. I will do you solid. I'll go dance with Penelope because she's kind of just standing by her lonesome. I will happily do that. Violet is happy with that decision. She's like, that is enough for me. Please go dance with someone right now. So he's making his way to Penelope, and as soon as he eventually gets to her, he hears this like low rumble of whispers. Everyone is talking right now, and he is just standing there thinking, what is going on right now? What is happening? He turns his head to the grand staircase that everyone is kind of looking towards right now, and he sees this beautiful girl in a sparkly, shimmery silver gown and a mask, by the way, it's a masquerade ball, making her way down the staircase. He drops everything that he's doing and he beelines for her. He shoves people out of his way because he's like, I have to meet her. He doesn't even say bye to Penelope, by the way. They don't get a dance together. He just beelines for Sophie, even though he doesn't know that it's Sophie. He gets over there and there are already like 7 to 8 men crowding Sophie because again, she's gorgeous, she's stunning, no one knows who she is, she's mysterious. And so all these men are already crowding her and he's like, gentlemen, she's already promised a dance to me. I get the first dance. Sophie takes his hand to get away from everyone that's surrounding her and she looks at him and she goes, I don't know how to dance. I'm so sorry, I don't know what I'm doing. He responds with, that's okay. Now I have one thing that I need to do tonight, teach you how to dance. She questions him thinking, how are you going to teach me to dance? It's so crowded in here. Everyone will learn that I don't know how. He tells her, let's just go to the terrace. Not a big deal whatsoever. She's like, there's not going to be room for us on the terrace for you to teach me how to dance. It is so crowded out there. He says, I know a little private terrace that nobody else knows of. Let's go. Before she leaves with him, she questions, how do you even know of this terrace in this house? Like, how do you know that there even is a private terrace? And this makes his night because he knows that she has no clue who he is. He is not a number to her. He is just a guy who offered to teach her how to dance. And he is ecstatic. Before Benedict and Sophie can make it to the private terrace, we hear a man yell, stop! No, wait up, I'm coming. And they're looking and they're like, who is this? But Benedict immediately recognizes him as Colin, our silliest of the Bridgerton brothers. We learn that Colin is complaining to Benedict and blaming him because as soon as Benedict left, Violet made Colin dance with Penelope. Colin is so mad at him over this, but this is when a light bulb goes off in Sophie's head. She goes, oh, y'all are Bridgertons. I'm talking to the Bridgertons right now. Because she reads Lady Whistledown all the time. She loves the gossip column because it makes her feel like she's a part of the society even though she isn't. And so she knows all about the Bridgertons. And so now she's like internally freaking out. Colin is still talking to them at this point and he tells him that it's really not a requirement for him to go back to the ballroom. He doesn't think Violet will care, he'll just stay out with them. Benedict looks at him and says, no, it's a requirement. You must leave. Go. Go. We love Benedict. Once Colin leaves, Benedict starts asking Sophie a series of questions. What's your name? Where are you from? Why haven't I ever seen you before? Is this your debut? How come you're not a part of this season? Why don't I know you? Sophie doesn't answer any of them. She gives him nothing, which is so frustrating to Benedict, but also he just gets more and more curious about her. Since she's not answering anything, he tells her, well, like, we gotta talk about something. How about you ask me something? Ask me any question whatsoever. What have you always wanted to know about Benedict Bridgerton? She responds with, what's your favorite color? To which he's taken aback that that's the question that she chose for one, and he just says, blue. They joke around for a little bit and she tells him that she is magical and that tonight she is transformed, but tomorrow she will disappear completely. This low-key is freaking Benedict out a little bit because he is thinking to himself, I have never felt this way to anybody before and I don't even know your name. And now you're telling me you're just disappearing tomorrow? Like, how can that be? But instead of voicing all of these concerns, he leans forward, kisses her forehead, technically her eyebrow, which I feel like is a little awkward. So in my mind, he kisses her forehead and he says, we must pack a lifetime into tonight. He has some good lines in this book, I'm not gonna lie. After he says this, Sophie tells him, please teach me how to dance, let's go dance. And he leads her down this hallway, up the stairs, and they end up going to this terrace that is right above the ballroom so that they can still hear the music, but they are alone together. This is where we learn through Sophie's mind that she does not want to be a mistress for anyone whatsoever. And so she is thinking to himself, like, I really like this guy. I don't have a title, so I can never tell him who I really am. And I can't be a mistress because I don't want to bring a child into this world that will have the same life that I have. It is not fair. And so that's a little heartbreaking, but we're gonna move forward from that. But please make a mental note of this. Mental note that she never wants to be a mistress. She tells herself though, this is okay. You are not gonna be a mistress. This is just one dance. It's not a big deal. And then he kisses her. And it's not just like a little peck. Like, he kisses her. So they're having a really good time out on this terrace, and then all of a sudden we hear a loud gong ring throughout the building. And she immediately goes, it's midnight, I have to go, I have to leave. And so she just sprints. She's sprinting away from him. He, being Benedict Bridgerton, has everyone hounding him once he's in sight, being like, how are you doing? What's happening? Have you seen me yet? Do you want to dance? And Lady Danbury is the one who ends up actually stopping him before he is able to catch up to Sophie. And Sophie gets in the carriage and she's gone. The only thing that Benedict has left of Sophie is her glove. Now please remember that her glove is monogrammed with the initials SLG. Sophie returns home. No one knew that she left. She did actually run into Lady Penwood at the ball. I don't think I mentioned this. She did run smack into her while Sophie was trying to leave, but she was not recognized one bit. She didn't even realize that Sophie was wearing her shoes. So that is a-okay. She makes it back home. No one knew she left. Life is back to normal for Sophie. Now panning to Lady Whistledown, and she is only talking about the girl in the silver dress and how this might be the only person that she does not know anything about them, which is an anomaly for Lady Whistledown. We are now panning to Benedict, day after the ball. He is distraught. Again, the only thing he has left of her is that glove, so he is literally just holding onto that thing, looking at it, being like, what is SLG? Who is SLG? And he thinks to himself, the only one who's gonna end up knowing is my mother. I'm gonna have to tell her about what happened because she knows everything about everyone. He brings the glove to Violet. Violet looks at it and she goes, this is a little outdated. This is not the current style, Benedict. I don't know why you're showing this to me. And he tells her all about the girl in the silver dress. And Violet is ecstatic, saying, oh my gosh, you're gonna end up getting married. This is the woman for you. Violet says that the only person she can think of is maybe the Earl of Penwood because his last name was Gunningworth, which would be the G. His mother ended up having the initials S and L, and so she's like, maybe start there. But the Earl of Penwood with the last name Gunningworth did pass away a few years ago, so it is a new one. But I believe that the Countess is still alive. So go to Lady Penwood's house. Maybe it was one of their daughters. I have met them before though, Benedict, and I didn't like them. I just don't think that they're your vibe, but if that's who you are falling in love with, that is okay, we will accept them. Benedict is literally just laughing at his mother, but he is so happy that he asked her because now he has a place for him to begin. Before Benedict leaves to go to the Penwood house, she tells him, hey, like just a heads up, Lady Penwood is not the nicest person I've ever met. She's actually a tad bit cold, so be wary of that. Just be a little wary. But Benedict barely hears her because he is out the door. He is so excited to see if this is where the girl in the silver dress is. Now let's pan to the Penwood house. We are with Lady Penwood, who is hollering after Sophie to come up to her room. Sophie goes, is like, what do you need? What can I help you with? All we see is Lady Penwood is holding a pair of shoes. The exact pair of shoes that Sophie wore last night. And so Sophie is standing there thinking to herself, oh my goodness, she knows. She knows, she knows, she knows. But Sophie is taking a breath just like this and lets Lady Penwood speak first. Lady Penwood goes, why are my brand new shoes scuffed? I just got these shoes. Why are they scuffed? To which Sophie responds, I had no clue how your shoes got scuffed. Maybe when you were putting them in your closet for the first time, they ended up hitting another pair and that's how they got scuffed. But honestly, I've never even seen these shoes a day in my life. The Countess is really not believing her at all, but she says, okay, well, if you said that they got scuffed in the rest of my closet with all my other shoes, you are polishing all my shoes right now, every single pair. At this exact moment, the butler comes upstairs and says, Lady Penwood, there is a gentleman caller here to see you. And Lady Penwood is ecstatic. And she's like, okay, we need to make sure that Posey and Rosamond are ready to go, especially Rosamond. So Sophie, before you start on my closet, you go get them ready. And oh, when you're finished, tell Rosamond to lock you in the closet until you're done polishing all my shoes. It has to get done. Sophie's standing there like, you're really gonna have me go get someone lock me in your closet? Perfect. What is my life at this point? Instead of going to Rosamond, she goes to Posey because she knows that Posey is the nicer sister to her. She tells Posey like, please just lock me in here. I do not want to have to tell your sister. Your sister will be so cruel to me. And Posey does it, but she's not happy about it. Before we can even see who the gentleman caller is, even though you and I both know who it's gonna be, we have a Lady Whistledown paper. Lady Whistledown is kind of giving us the fashion breakdown for the masquerade ball. We see that Posey went as a mermaid. It's a little tragic, but instead of just kind of bashing Posey and saying that she looked horrendous and she was the worst of the night, she decides to bash the Featheringtons because Lady Featherington, Philippa, and Prudence went as a bowl of fruit. Yes, I repeat, they went as a bowl of fruit. So Lady Featherington was a bunch of grapes, Philippa was an orange, and then Prudence was an apple, and that was their costume. I really hope when we get Benedict's season we see this costume, because I need to see what the costume department is going to do with this, because I will be cackling. Back at the Penwood Residency, we see obviously that the gentleman caller is Benedict, which is making Lady Penwood ecstatic, saying, I just knew that my daughters, specifically Rosamond, was meant to be a Bridgerton. I've called it since day one. This is perfect. He's calling on my daughters. Beautiful. Benedict really isn't here for a long time, but while he is here, Lady Penwood is just discussing Sophie to him and complaining about how you can't find quality help, and Sophie is the worst person to ever exist, and yada, yada, yada. And Benedict is just thinking to himself, whew, my mother was right. You are a lot. You are cold, and I can tell that every single person here does not want to work for you. Whoever this Sophie girl may be, she deserves better. That is what he's thinking to himself. Eventually, Posey and Rosamond do come down and they meet Benedict. He takes a look at Rosamond and he immediately is like, this is not the girl that I met last night. The girl I met last night had this beautiful, dirty blonde hair, and Rosamond's hair is a little too blonde to match the girl in the silver dress. Benedict is trying to leave, but before he actually gets out of there, he looks to Lady Penwood and he goes, are you sure you don't have any more daughters or relatives living here? Like, you are positive? To which Lady Penwood was like, no, it is just my daughters. There is nobody else here. And so Benedict is like, okay, well, thank you so much for your time. I gotta go. He doesn't get too far when he is outside because Posey and Rosamond are looking at him through the window being like, what is he doing right now? Lady Penwood overhears them, comes toward the window, and sees that Benedict is holding up a white glove with the monogram. I don't think she can see the monogram, but again, as we said earlier, this glove is outdated. It is from a specific time period that is not current. And so you can tell that it is older, and Lady Penwood immediately knows who the girl in the silver dress is. She turns white as a sheet and a light bulb goes off in her head. She makes the connection between this glove and her scuffed shoe, and she just keeps repeating as she is running upstairs, how did she get out? How was she able to go? How did we not know that she was there? Lady Penwood makes her way upstairs. She unlocks the door, opens it, looks at Sophie and goes, I want you out of this house immediately. You are over the age of 20. I don't have to care for you anymore. Get out. Sophie, kind of assuming that this was going to happen at one point or the other, Emily thinks to herself, well, I have nothing to lose, so I'm about to ask, why did you even keep me here? To which Lady Penwood responds with, you're cheaper than a normal maid. Lady Penwood says, I know that you went to the ball last night. I know that you're the reason my shoes are scuffed. Sophie continuously denies these claims, and so Lady Penwood lifts up the pair of scuffed shoes and says, put them on your feet. Put them on your feet right now. Sophie says no to doing this, but Lady Penwood says, how dare you pretend to be one of us high up in society at this ball? How dare you think that? You are nothing. Sophie's standing there. Honestly, she's taking it like a champ, because if it was me, I would be crumbling in tears. But she's taking it like a champ, and she's ready to get out. Lady Penwood does tell her, though, honestly, you can stay until my shoes are polished. As soon as you finish your job, you need to leave. But honestly, she feels the most free than she has in a really long time. But knowing that she no longer has money, and she's currently polishing Lady Penwood's shoes, she sees a really sparkly diamond encrusted shoe clip and says, well, you haven't been paying me for all the years that I have been your maid. I'm taking this. So she puts it in her pocket, and when she's done with her job, she leaves. Lady Penwood has no idea that she did this. Lady Penwood has no idea that she has taken a shoe clip. But she pocketed the shoe clip. Make a mental note of this. It will come back around. Unlike books 1 and 2, this book is split up into parts, and so we've now entered part 2. So some time has passed. We now have a time jump. I'm assuming this is why season 3 is Colin's season and not Benedict's season, because there is a time jump, but I digress. Anywho, Lady Whistledown is gonna catch us up. Let's see what she has to say. It's now been 3 years since any Bridgerton has gotten married, and so Violet's getting a little antsy. Benedict isn't married, Colin isn't married, Eloise really is not liking the social scene, and so it doesn't look like she's ever gonna get married. Violet's getting a little antsy over this fact. And to put this into perspective, Benedict is 30 with no wife, Colin is 26 with no wife, Eloise is 21 with no husband, Francesca is 20 with no husband. Just for some perspective. To avoid his mother showing him off to the town, trying to marry him off, Benedict decides to go to a party hosted by Philip Cavender, and this isn't like a ball or anything high up in society. These are actually some pretty scandalous things going down in this house. He's honestly just there to play some cards. But like other scandalous things are happening. Benedict is not having a nice time at all, and he really wants to leave, but he's like, I can't leave until I say bye to the host, because that's just rude. My mother taught me better than that. So he's kind of searching and wandering around the house, looking for Philip so he can skedaddle. Benedict is aware that it is very late tonight, so he won't be able to make it back into London, but he does have a small cottage, like maybe 30 minutes away, that he can stay in for the night. Now let's pan to what Sophie has been up to since she left London. It's been about 2 years since she's been on her own and has been away from London. She ended up selling the shoe clip. She learned it wasn't diamond encrusted one bit, so she really did not get a lot of money from it. But that's okay, she took the money that she could get. She is really smart because she did grow up getting all of these lessons. She thinks to herself, I can be a governess, let me be a governess. No one will hire her because she is young and pretty, and every single woman is threatened and worried that their husband will try and get with Sophie. And so no one will hire her at all. She ends up getting a job at the Cavender's house. Don't know if that last name is ringing any bells for y'all right now, but you will see. Ends up getting a job there as one of their maids. The Cavenders are honestly on the older side, and so very, very easy to take care of. They don't really ask for much. She really enjoys this job until the Cavender's son returns home, Philip. Philip, as y'all have already heard this name before, is crusty. Crusty and creepy Philip is what I am referring to him as. He keeps trying to make advancements onto Sophie, even when his parents are there. Like, he is following her around, not leaving her alone at all. So when Mr. and Mrs. Cavender are out of town for a night, Sophie's scared. Sophie thinks to herself, I have got to get out of here. I really would like to resign with them face to face, but they're not here. I gotta go. I will leave them a note. I gotta go before Philip realizes I'm here. She's a little late as she's making her way downstairs, and Philip finds her. Creepy, crusty Philip. Philip and his friends are being horrible to Sophie and being scumbags, and honestly, like, Sophie is pretty dang scared at this moment in time until we hear a man shout, Philip, what are you doing? Get away from her. Stop, stop, stop. That man is Benedict. Sophie immediately recognizes him because she knew she was with Benedict Bridgerton at the ball, even though he does not recognize her because, again, she had a mask on, never revealed her name. Anywho, Benedict stops them, makes them leave her alone. And when she asks him, like, why did you do this for me? He says, I have so many sisters, and what they were doing is not right. No, no, no. So he genuinely saves her before anything can happen. He tells her, come with me. I have a cottage not too far from here. We'll go back to London. We'll try and find you a job somewhere. Not a big deal. Philip responds with, she works for my parents. If she leaves right now, she's not getting this job back. Benedict looks at her and says, I will get you a job. Just come with me because this is not a safe space for you. Sophie already was quitting, and so him saying that she would get a job honestly scares her a little bit because she doesn't want to go back to London, but also makes her really happy because she'll have another opportunity. She tells him that she doesn't really want to go to London. He does tell her that his mom has so many houses everywhere. She has one in the country. She can probably find Sophie a job there. Sophie's like, you know what? Let's go. To your carriage, let's go. I need to get the heck out of Dodge. I also just want to note that Sophie is currently having an existential crisis because he doesn't recognize her. So on one hand, she's like, thank goodness he doesn't recognize me. I didn't need this right now in my life. But on the other hand, she's like, he didn't recognize me. Like, are you kidding me? I haven't been able to stop thinking about him and he hasn't recognized me. So it's a little bittersweet for her right now. We're also gonna pan back to Lady Whistledown because of course she has another announcement for us. We're gonna focus in on creepy, crusty Philip because creepy, crusty Philip now has his sights on Rosamond. Now, I don't wish creepy, crusty Philip on anyone, but I do think it's a little ironic that he's now chasing after Rosamond. Anywho, let's pan to Benedict and Sophie in their carriage. This is an open top carriage, mind you, and it starts to storm, torrential downpour. We learned that Benedict was actually sick last week with a really bad head cold, and now that he is out in the freezing rain in an open top carriage, he's not okay at all. Sophie realizes this, and Sophie goes, hey, why don't I drive the carriage? Just a thought. Benedict is thinking to himself, no, like, it's okay, I'm okay, but he's hacking up a storm at this point. And so he gives the reins to Sophie. Sophie gets them to the cottage, and she notices that the cottage is named My Cottage. There is a sign out front that reads, My Cottage. And I just love that. I think that is so flippin' iconic. I love. Sophie gets out of the carriage. Benedict also gets out of the carriage. They're about to go open up the home. But Sophie honestly has a little bit of a breakdown, and she just starts crying and sobbing. And Benedict just opens up his arms and holds her until she is done. And it takes a little bit because she has so many emotions that have just built up over the years of her life that just are coming out all at once. He just holds her, and when she's done, he asks her, are you all better? And they move forward. He finds a spare key. He goes inside the house. He believed the caretakers would be here. I made them be the old couple from Courage the Cowardly Dog, by the way. But he believed that they would be here. They're actually not. And so he realizes that, ooh, we are unchaperoned. Oh, no. We now have another update from Lady Whistledown. This book has a lot of Lady Whistledown updates. Just so we're aware, like, a lot of information are coming from them. We learn that there is a feud brewing between Lady Pinwood and Lady Featherington because one of Lady Featherington's maids left in the middle of the night to start working at Lady Pinwood's. But in less than a week, this maid was back at the Featheringtons because she was so mistreated at the Penwoods. Interesting, right? I think that's rather interesting. Let's pan back to what's happening at the cottage right now because Benedict is sick. He is so sick because, again, last week he had a head cold. He was just in a rainstorm. He is not okay. He's still in his wet clothes. He's ill. Sophie is wandering around while Benedict is trying to start a fire for them because he needs to get warm ASAP. She comes across this bowl of rocks. Benedict looks at her and goes, oh, I collect those. That's what I do in my spare time. I collect these rocks. She also finds a pile of drawings and sketches, and he sketches so many different things. He's really good at it, but he sketches so many different things. The Bridgerton house, all of his siblings, the girl in the silver dress. There are so many pictures of the girl in the silver dress that are identical to Sophie. Identical. Again, they have the mask on, of course, but basically identical. And Sophie just thinks to herself, he drew me by memory. He literally drew me multiple times by memory. And so now she's feeling a little better about herself, but like also still having an existential crisis, obviously. Benedict starts talking to her while she's looking at all this stuff, but he's slurring his words. Everything he's saying is not making sense at all. And so she goes over to him, feels his forehead, and he is burning up, has a horrible fever, helps take his clothes off of him because he needs to get into dry clothes, and he's just out for the night. He is so sick. She is sleeping in the chair next to him to make sure that he's okay throughout the night. He is erratic and frantic, and again, it's making no sense in the middle of the night. He's just talking, keeps saying, where did you go? Where did you go? Why did you leave me? Which you can infer that he is having a dream about the girl in the silver dress. And Sophie just responds, I'm here, I'm here. Benedict looks up, and this is the most lucid he's been all night, and goes, no, not you, and then falls back asleep. And so Sophie's like, it is me, but she doesn't say that out loud, and also he won't remember even if she does. We're gonna pan to the next morning. Sophie is startled awake by the crab gates. These are the gatekeepers for this cottage. They were not expecting any visitors, and they're like, what on earth are you doing here unchaperoned? I don't understand. Who the heck are you? She's explaining what went down. Miss Crabgate is like, oh, Benedict is really just the sweetest person ever, but it really doesn't explain why you're in his room. Like, what is going on? Sophie's like, he is so sick right now. He has a fever. I don't know what to do. Crabgate goes, oh my goodness, I just make the perfect tonic. I will cure him. Don't even worry. I've got this. While Sophie is explaining this whole story to the Crabgates and Miss Crabgate is making this tonic, Benedict is now awake, very coherent. He is making perfect sense, explaining everything once again to the Crabgates. But we also kind of go into his mind for a second, and we learn that he was indeed dreaming of the girl in the silver dress. He hasn't dreamt of her in months, and so he's now wondering what Sophie has unlocked inside of him for him to have these dreams again. He's thinking to himself, like, maybe she could be the girl in the silver dress, but when he's looking at her, he's like, no way. She looks completely different. 2 years have passed. She's living on her own, is not being fed the normal food that she has normally been given. Her hair is shorter, it's darker. She has also lost a lot of weight because of the point I just made. So she's really not looking like she used to. Miss Crabgate returns with a pair of clothes for Sophie because she was actually wearing his trousers to get out of the wet clothes, and they don't fit clearly, but the dress that she gave her is just tragic. They are not the same size in height or width whatsoever. So the dress is a little big this way, but it's really short. So it's a hot mess for Sophie right now. When Sophie leaves the room to go change, Miss Crabgate looks at Benedict and goes, "Can we keep her?" Benedict looks at her and says, "What do you mean, can we keep her?" Miss Crabgate is like, "Well, I mean, Mr. Crabgate and I are getting a little old, and it'd be nice to have another set of hands here. She said earlier that she was a housemaid. She's used to the experience. She's looking for a job. You can hire her. She can work here." Benedict is nodding his head, being like, "Oh, yeah, of course." But the back of my head is like, heck no. Heck no, I'm not letting go of her right now. She will not be yours. She's probably coming back home with me in London. Benedict really does not like the recovery process. In fact, he's a horrible patient, but he does note that Sophie is making this process a whole lot better for him, and he absolutely loves that she's there with him. She's reading him poetry all the time and just speaking to him. One day she goes into the room, she's reading him poetry, and he starts feeling things. He starts feeling things, and he's like, "You've got to go. I need you to get out of the room right now, Sophie. I'm so sorry. You've got to leave." And Sophie's looking at him and be like, "Oh, you need to use the chamber pot. Of course I will leave." Because she doesn't understand what's happening. And he's like, "Well, that's not it, but okay, just go." And so she goes to Miss Crabgate and she's explaining what happened, and she's like, "I don't understand why he wouldn't just let me go get the chamber pot for him. Like, I'm a maid, I'm used to this, like, not a big deal." And she responds with, "Well, I was just in his room and he's not in there. He's not in there at all. And also, like, chamber pot has not been used. I can just tell it has not been used." So Sophie is just standing there thinking to herself, where did he go? I don't understand at all. She's about to help with dinner until she is stopped because we learn that Benedict has informed everyone that Sophie is a guest in this house. She is not lifting a finger. She is not helping at all. And so Sophie is now thinking to herself, what am I supposed to do? So she ends up just kind of going on a walk. She finds this pond, and in this pond, there is a naked man. Does anyone have any guesses on who this naked man might be? I'll give you like 3 seconds, okay? 3, 2, 1. It's Benedict. Benedict left his room because he wanted to take an ice cold swim in the pond because of the situation that happens. Sophie, instead of being like, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, I don't want to watch," like, no, she stays. She stays and is just hiding and watching. Kind of like a creep, if I'm being so for real with y'all. She moves a little bit and something makes a loud noise. I actually can't remember what it is, but something makes a loud noise where she's at. He knows that someone is watching. So he's calling out, "Who is there?" And then he realizes it's Sophie. Sophie tries to run away in this moment because this is really awkward and uncomfortable and embarrassing. He literally hollers after her, "Do not run away from me. What are you doing? What is going on?" And she's like, "Me? What's going on with me? What's going on with you? You were just sick. And now you're taking a cold pond swim? What are you doing? Like, why are you questioning me?" Benedict doesn't even answer her. He just says, "Stay here. I need to go put on clothes. I feel very exposed. I'm gonna go put on clothes." He goes to do that. Sophie's still staying there thinking to herself, what have I gotten myself into? Why didn't I just leave? Same Sophie. Why didn't you just leave? Benedict returns and he tells her, "I think I'm going to kiss you." To which Sophie responds with, "You think?" To which Benedict responds to, "Oh, I think I have to. It is like breathing for me at this point. I really don't have any choice in this matter." While he is kissing her, she actually starts to cry because she is taken back to the night that they first kissed at the ball. Benedict immediately stops when she starts crying. Benedict is saying, "Oh my goodness, I am so sorry. I definitely misread this situation." And Sophie says, "No, you didn't misread the situation. I'm just really confused, a lot going on. I'm happy right now, but also I feel like I shouldn't be. There's a lot going on." Benedict is really confused this moment in time and keeps asking Sophie for an explanation because he says, "I know you're not a maid. You speak too well to be a maid. It seems like you have had lessons from a governess throughout your life." This freaks Sophie out and she turns to run away. She is saying, "I cannot handle this right now. I've got to go." Benedict tells her, "I did not mean that as an insult. I'm just wondering who you are." She looks at him and says, "I am not your responsibility." To which Benedict looks back at her and replies, "You could be. You could be mine forever." To split up this chapter before we go back to where we're at now, Lady Whistledown has another announcement just saying how Eloise Bridgerton has no clue where Benedict is. No one in the town knows where he's been for a hot second. back to our regularly scheduled program. Sophie is taken aback by what Benedict has just told her, and she says, I do not want to be your mistress. I'm so sorry, but I don't want to be your mistress. He replies with, I just want you to be with me. You don't have to be my mistress, just be with me. She questions him with, how is that any different? He just shrugs and says, I don't know, it just is. And before she even has a chance to respond, he literally pulls her and kisses her for a while. They're just like kissing by the pond right now. In the midst of them kissing, he pulls back for a minute and he says, I will get you so much better clothes than this. I will take such great care of you. And this snaps Sophie back into the reality that if she ends up being his mistress, she's her mom. She could put a kid into this universe that was just like her, and she does not want that for anybody. She keeps telling him, I am not going to be your mistress. No. He gets mad at her when she turns to walk away a little bit, and he's like, where are you going? She responds with, are you even listening to me? Like, I'm not going to be your mistress. I'm not going to London with you. He keeps saying, yes, you are going to London with me. We'll talk about this later. Let's just go. They have a little bit, not of like a fight or feud, but they do go back and forth for a little bit. And I will note that they do have the best banter so far in the Bridgerton universe. Like, they really do go toe to toe with one another, and I really appreciate that. Once they get back to the house, Sophie starts packing all of her belongings, and Benedict is just standing there in the doorway watching her. And she realizes that Benedict is not leaving. Sophie looks at him and says, I can't be your mistress. Benedict focuses in on that word, can't, because every other time she says, I won't, I'm not, no, and now she says the word can't. As soon as he focuses in on that word can't, he realizes she's illegitimate. That's why she doesn't want to be my mistress. He looks at her and says, if we bring any kids into this world, I will love them with everything I have in me. To which she responds, that's great and all. What about your wife? He shrugs and says, I will have to get married one day, but I won't love her like I love you. Not the best choice of words, buddy. Sophie says, I know that you will have to get married. That's my point, and I don't want to be your mistress. Kind of skirting around this topic a little bit, Benedict keeps asking her, who are your parents? Who are you? You're illegitimate. You're from London. Who are you, Sophie? And obviously Sophie is not going to answer this question for him, so he gives her two options. One, come to London with me. You don't have to be my mistress. We've already gone through this, but come to London with me. I will get you a job at my mother's house like we agreed with. Or two, okay, you don't want to come to London with me. I will go to the nearest officer and I will tell him that you stole from me. And instead of them taking you to Australia where you normally are taken if you steal anything, I'll just tell him that I want to keep a close eye on you, so you'll have to come back to London with me. Those are the two options. Sophie looks at him and says, you are making me hate you. You do realize this, like, this is backfiring for you. And Benedict says, I can live with that. I just need to know that you're safe and that you are taken care of. So they pack up all their bags, they head to London together. We're going to the Bridgerton house. Sophie and Benedict are talking about the Bridgerton house, and Sophie learns that Violet actually doesn't live in the big Bridgerton house that everyone assumed that she's always lived in, because after the masquerade ball, that was her big farewell of that house, so that she could give it to Kate and Antony after their firstborn child, whom they named Edmund. Isn't that just a fun little parallel that they named their first son after his dad since he was so close to his dad? I absolutely love that. Anywho, they make it to the house where Violet and all the kids are at, and Violet happily says that she will find Sophie a job, but she is questioning Sophie a whole bunch. When Sophie leaves the room, gets a little settled, she comes back to Benedict and says, are you sure she didn't grow up in society? Because she is very clear when she speaks. She is so smart. I can already tell from this first encounter. I don't really understand. And Benedict, knowing that it is not his secret to share, does not say anything on this. But Violet says, give me a month and I will figure out everything I need to know. Literally give me a month. No, ooh, guess what? If I have Eloise help me, we'll figure it out in a few weeks. So I do appreciate that Benedict did not tell his mom, because he really could have, but he kept that secret between the both of them, which I will give him brownie points for. I will. By the next morning, Sophie has already met 5 of the Bridgerton siblings. She has met Antony, Daphne, Eloise, Francesca, and Hyacinth. Gregory is at school. Colin is told to be traveling the globe, but what Sophie doesn't reveal is that she actually has already met Colin. If you remember the masquerade ball where they talked for a little bit. But she's not telling that to anyone because no one knows that she's the girl in the silver dress. Benedict low-key keeps showing up at this house to the point where Sophie goes, do you even live here? Like, I'm pretty sure you don't live at this house, but it seems like you do because you're always here. He responds with, no, I don't live here. I live like maybe 2 blocks down the road, but why would I not be here because you're here. They banter back and forth for a little bit. I told y'all they have really good banter. They do that for a little bit. He swoops in, he kisses her, and he kisses her for several pages. She kisses him back, by the way. I would like to make note of that. He kisses her back. While this is happening though, he realizes we are out in the open. We have to move. We have to move right now, because if anyone sees this, she's gonna end up getting fired at a job where they are treating her well, and this will break her spirit, and I cannot be the cause of her spirit breaking. I can't. So he says once again, come home with me. She tells him, no, I cannot be your mistress. He moves on from that point. He has to leave, but he tells her to keep smiling, and if she doesn't keep smiling, he will know. He will know. And so he leaves for the day. The next day, Sophie's in the room with Violet, Eloise, Hyacinth, and Francesca, and they are embroidering. Honestly, they are speaking very casually around Sophie, which is making Sophie feel very welcomed into their family, even though she's literally just a maid. I believe that she is a lady's maid for the girls though, so she is a little higher up. Anywho, they are speaking very casually around her, and so she kind of quips in every so often with a little thing. Hyacinth will literally chip in and be like, are you okay? What did you just say? I know you just said something. And Sophie will be like, oh, I didn't say anything. I just pricked my finger. No big deal. I probably need to get a thimble. Didn't say anything. And then Benedict shows up. Everyone except for Violet is questioning why Benedict is here, but Sophie makes up an excuse so that she can leave and go into town for a little bit. When she steps outside, she immediately sees Lady Penwood, Posy, and Rosamond. The only one that sees her is Posy, and Sophie immediately shakes her head like this, no, 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 at Posy, so that she will not mention it to Lady Penwood. After they've gone and Sophie is sure that she has not been seen, Sophie genuinely is having a panic attack in the streets. We're gonna pan back to Benedict, who is really trying to leave the room where his mother and sister are at so that he can kind of trail Sophie a little bit and talk to her, but it's taken him a while to get there. As soon as he is able to leave the room, he sees Sophie on the street. He sees that she's having a panic attack. He holds her and he's like, calm down, breathe in and out, it's okay. Let's go back to my house. We literally will not do anything, but like, we need to get you off this street because whatever has happened, like, I need to get you away from this situation. And so they walk to his house. During this moment, this is where Benedict brings up to Sophie, which he thinks for the first time, it's really not, but he brings up that he really does not like being a Bridgerton, even though he loves this family. And Sophie is just like, wow, this is the first time I am hearing this information. Yes, of course. When in reality, she already knows this, but she is very respectful while he is telling her this. After Benedict is saying all this, Sophie decides to say, you are nothing like your family. You are so special, and I've just been around your family for a little bit, but I can already tell that you are so different and you are so individual. You are an artist, you are creative, you are not just a Bridgerton. He admits to her that he has never shown anybody his drawings, and she is the first person to have ever seen them. And it's in this moment that Benedict realizes that he is truly in love with Sophie. And he kisses her. And he does a little more than kisses her for the rest of chapter 17, if we're being honest. And then after this happens, Sophie tells him that she does love him, but she cannot compromise her beliefs for him. She cannot be a mistress. And he tells her, I can't marry you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, but I can't marry you because we are not in the same class position. I have a title, like, it would just be so messy for my family if I were to marry you. And she's like, I know, that's what I've been telling you, and I'm sorry, but I cannot be your mistress. I'm being quite transparent. This chapter gave me whiplash. We went from happiness, 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 fun times, to I am uncomfortable, all within one chapter. After this, we realize that it's been 2 weeks since Benedict has even visited the Bridgerton house, just because he's giving Sophie his space, but also he needs space from the conversation that they just had because he's so confused. In the drawing room, Sophie is down there and all the sisters are talking about how they don't really know where Benedict fits into this family because Anthony is so good with history. Simon, who's Daphne's husband, remember that? He's so good at math. Colin is the funny one. Sophie interrupts all of them and she goes, he's amazing at art. He is an artist. It is spectacular. And they all look at her in awe, thinking, I did not know that. This man is 30 years old and I did not know that about him. How do you know this? And Mel just kind of sitting there smiling. She knows. She always knows. She's the mastermind of this whole series. It is in this very moment that Penelope Featherington comes into the drawing room and she asks, like, did I interrupt anything? And Daphne's like, no, just like a really awkward moment, but like, that's okay. Like, come in, come in. Penelope stops in her tracks, looks at Sophie and goes, do I know you? I have to have known you somewhere. I never forget a face. I have to have known you. And this takes Sophie back because she thinks, oh my gosh, we have met. Right before I met Benedict, you were right there at the table. He was going to dance with you. You definitely have seen me before. So now I have to try and convince her that she's never seen me. And Penelope is persistent. She just keeps staring at her being like, I have met you. I know I have met you. And just staring her down, trying to connect the dots, but she can't. Let's now pan to Benedict, who runs into Anthony and Colin when he returns to Bridgerton home in order to see Sophie. This is who he runs into. This is what's happening because Colin has just returned home from his travels. Colin is explaining that Violet has been all over his case, trying to get him to marry. He's 26. She's like, it's time. We need another Bridgerton to get married ASAP. Benedict's standing there like, I know. I'm 30 years old. She's been doing the same thing to me. Anthony looks over at Colin and says, you know you're gonna end up marrying Penelope Featherington, right? Which just makes Colin so angry and so mad. He gets so frustrated at them that he screams out loud, I will never, ever marry Penelope Featherington. As soon as Colin says these words, there's a really faint and they all turn around, and who's standing there? Penelope. And she is furious, more than embarrassed. She is furious. She keeps saying that. She's like, did I ask you to marry me? Did I ask you to marry me? To which Colin is like, no, you didn't. I'm so sorry that you overheard this. You were not supposed to hear this. Please do not be embarrassed. To where Penelope's like, I'm not embarrassed. I'm not embarrassed. I'm never gonna marry Benedict Bridgerton. And all these boys are like, what? What are you talking about? And she looks at Benedict and she goes, are you embarrassed that you overheard me just saying that, Benedict? Benedict's like, no, I'm not embarrassed at all. See, boys, I'm not embarrassed that I overheard you saying this because it's not an embarrassing thing. We love our girl Pen. We love our girl Pen. I would also just like to note that this scene does happen in the show, but it happens between other people at a ball within season 2, I think. So I do love that this is kind of setting us up for their book. I digress. Penelope is telling them, you know what, I need to leave. Goodbye. I gotta go. Colin's like, do you have an escort to bring you back home? Like, I will walk with you. And she's like, no, I do not need you to walk with me. Anthony goes, you know what, I'm gonna walk you out. And Penelope responds with, I don't need someone to walk me out. Anthony just responds with, humor me. Let's go on a walk. Now, we don't know what they're talking about during this walk. Y'all will find out once we start talking about book 4, but currently, we don't know what they're talking about. We just know that this was an awkward situation. Awkward. Once Anthony and Penelope leave, Colin looks at Benedict and Colin immediately goes, I need a drink. I need a drink right now. Violet exits the room, finds Benedict and goes, I just have the perfect girl for you. I have found her. You will be in love. Like, she is the girl for you. Benedict's like, okay, sure. I'll meet her. Why not? And to his surprise, he is having to meet 7 young women. He is having to meet 7 of them who are not his type, and they are, honestly, not to be rude, boring. They are so boring. He's so incredibly angry at his mom for doing this. This is the moment where he truly learns that he is in love with Sophie, like head over heels. There's no one else for him. Even girl in silver dress cannot compare to Sophie in this moment in time, which is an astounding fact to Benedict, because Benedict was really grappling with the fact that he was in love with 2 people, one he'd probably never see again. The other one doesn't want to be his mistress, so where does that leave him? So we have that little revelation. But before the final girl comes in, he stops his mother and he asks her, what happens if someone falls in love with someone that's unsuitable for them? Violet stops in her tracks and she's like, do I know this person? Benedict responds with, just ignore that, but answer the question, please. Violet responds with, you're going to be met with scrutiny on both sides. Like, you will end up being a wallflower, and all of y'all are not used to that lifestyle. Y'all have always been adored by everyone in the town, so you definitely would have scrutiny. But just know that I will never forsake you or forbid you or send you away. I will love you regardless of who you end up being in love with, because I just want you to be happy. And this like breaks Benedict down because it's a little bit of a relief off his shoulders. He realizes that the town won't accept him, and he knows that that's really hard, but he does appreciate the fact that his mother is so caring and loving over the situation, so snaps to her. Once Violet and Benedict are done with their conversation, he immediately runs to the nursery because he knows that's where Sophie's at, goes to see Sophie. They're playing a little game. I think it's a hide and seek, so they have Sophie in a blindfold. As soon as Benedict sees our girl Sophie in a blindfold, he has seen the light. He has seen the light. He realizes who the girl with the silver dress is. Do y'all know? Do you have any clue? Because he's like, whoa, it's Sophie. Who knew that the love of my life once, the girl in the silver dress, and the love of my life currently, Sophie, are the same person? Wow, like what a surprising twist in our tale. Who would have expected? Certainly not him. Certainly not him. You think that this news would make him so ecstatic, but it's actually the opposite. So he goes into the nursery, he looks at Hyacinth, he says, leave. Immediately leave, take the children, go. I need to talk to Sophie. Talks to Sophie and basically goes off on her asking, were you ever gonna tell me that I fell in love with you 2 years ago? Were you ever gonna bring that up to me? She responds so honestly with no. Like, no, I was never going to tell you. You didn't need to know. It would just hurt more. And he is over here looking at her saying, I have been wrestling with the fact that I'm trying to let this one person go so that I can love you fully, but you're the same person. I searched for you for 6 months. This really takes her back because she had no clue that he was looking for her. Remember, in the beginning of the story, all she knew was that a gentleman caller went to the Penwood house. She had no clue who it was. So many emotions are being felt right now, and Sophie finally comes clean and says that she's the illegitimate child of Earl of Penwood. And Benedict in his mind is thinking, I was so close to finding you. I was literally so close to finding you, but you were just out of reach. And he's just so angry right now. So mad. And he says, I cannot be around you right now. I cannot. I have to go take a breather and I have to leave. Y'all, this story is about to get so crazy. So like, again, buckle up, because this is a very wild ride that I love, and I ate this part up. Lady Whistledown reported that Lady Penwood was throwing a tantrum the other day in her house and threw at least 17 pairs of shoes at her servants. Are any dots connecting for y'all right now? 17 pairs of shoes. Let's continue. Sophie decides that she can no longer stay at the Bridgerton house. It is just too hard on her. It's too hard for Benedict. She loves him, but she can't be with him in any capacity. She realizes that she is hurting him. So instead of just leaving, she decides to go tell Violet firsthand. She resigns. Violet tries to get her to stay. Sophie says, no, 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 I cannot stay. I have to leave. And so Violet gives her money, like, take this money. You need something to find your way. Please take this money from me. I'm gonna get the footman to bring the carriage around, take you wherever you need to go. Please use this. Sophie is saying, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. I'll wait outside until the carriage comes around. While she is waiting outside, who spots her? Who spots her? Lady Penwood. Not only does she spot her, but she immediately hollers, officer, officer, I need an officer right now. Arrest that girl. She is a thief. She stole my shoe clip. She is a thief. The officer comes over, he starts to get closer to Sophie. He's about to arrest her, but he's like, shoe clip, like that's really not that much, but okay. And then Lady Penwood goes, actually, she stole my wedding ring. This girl right here stole my wedding ring. Arrest her right now for being a thief. And in the middle of town, he chases after Sophie and essentially brings her to the ground before they arrest her and take her to jail. In the middle of town, right outside of the Bridgerton home. This is a lot. And it's so much that Lady Whistledown only talks about this in her next day's gossip sheet. Like, this is all she is talking about because it happened in the middle of town. But then we pan to Benedict, who has no clue that this even happened. He is currently fencing with Colin. Colin is telling him, just marry her at this point. I don't understand the problem. Benedict is like, how the heck did you know I was in love with Sophie? I don't understand how you knew. And Colin's like, everyone knew. Y'all are always looking at each other. Everyone knew. And Colin keeps saying, at the end of the day, you don't like any of these people anyway. Who cares if you're ostracized by them if you get to spend it with the woman that you're in love with? Benedict then explains that Sophie was the woman in the silver dress, which kind of takes Colin back a little bit, but he's like, okay, good. So then you get the two people that you've ever been in love with and you realize that they're one. You realize that they're the same person. Go marry her. Benedict is now sprinting to the Bridgerton house. He needs to talk to Sophie. He needs to tell her that he doesn't care, that she lied, that she doesn't have a title. He wants to spend the rest of his life with her. But he gets to the Bridgerton home and he realizes that Sophie's not there. Violet explains that Sophie quit, but for some reason the carriage was never moved. She doesn't really understand what was happening. But then Francesca and Hyacinth come forward and they're like, did y'all read the latest Lady Whistledown? This is what happened. Sophie has been arrested. And Benedict is like, excuse me? Why has she been arrested? Violet is there saying she would never hurt a fly. She wouldn't steal anything. I will go vouch for her. Let me go vouch for her. We can get her out. And the children are just like, yes, let's all go. And he's like, hold up, you're not coming with me. The only one that's coming with me is Mom. We need to go right now. We need to get her out of jail ASAP. Before we pan back to Sophie, Lady Whistledown has an announcement and says that Benedict and Violet were seen racing out of their home very suddenly, and also Lady Penwood and Posey were seen having the loudest argument in public the other day. What is it about? Who's to say? But it was a very loud and public argument. Keep that in mind. Now we're with Sophie in jail. Lady Pinwood has decided to go visit Sophie. Sophie asks her, what do you want from me at this point? You know I didn't steal your wedding ring. Why do you hate me so much? To which Lady Pinwood responds with, because he loved you and I will never forgive him for that. And Sophie's just shaking her head back and forth like, what are you talking about? He didn't even leave me with anything. Obviously, he didn't love me. Lady Pinwood refuses to acknowledge this point and also refuses to stop talking. She keeps badgering Sophie about how her time in Australia will be. They won't treat her kindly over there. This is what she deserves, yada, yada, yada. And while she's talking about all this, Violet and Benedict burst into the room. They're not into the back cell yet, but they have burst into the front. And all we hear is Violet going off on them, Benedict going off on them. Benedict is saying, let me see my fiance, get my fiance out of this cell. Yes, ladies and gents, you heard that correct. He said, fiance? So at this moment, Lady Pinwood's jaw is on the floor, Sophie's jaw is on the floor, Violet is just smiling. He is stressed, but he's like, I said what I said. I said what I said. Benedict runs up to where Sophie is standing. He kisses her in between the bars. Violet looks over at Lady Pinwood and goes, I have never liked you. And Lady Pinwood's just like, okay. The guard is so confused at this moment in time. He goes, Bridgertons, are you related to the Viscount? They're both just nodding like, yes. And he looks at Lady Pinwood and he goes, you're telling me you just had me arrest the fiance of a Bridgerton? Like, what is wrong with you? And she's saying there being like, she stole my wedding ring. She stole my shoe clip. And immediately Posey walks through and goes, she didn't steal your shoe clip. I did. It was me. If you're gonna arrest anyone, put me in there. And Lady Pin was like, don't arrest my daughter. That's my daughter. We will not arrest her. This whole scene is just making Benedict smile. Violet keeps repeating over and over again, let my daughter-in-law out of this cell. Let her out. Lady Penwood and Posey are continuously fighting, and then Lady Penwood stops and goes, okay, fine. Maybe she stole the shoe clip, but my wedding ring, where is that? Tell me exactly where that is. Posey goes, maybe you shouldn't keep it in a jewelry box in your room if you don't want anyone to find it. Sophie still has so many questions right now, and she keeps saying, well, I just need to know one thing. Why did you let me stay past the age of 20? It makes no sense. Posey interrupts Sophie and says, it's because the Earl left you money. You literally have a dowry at this point, which again, making them just smile nice and big. They are so ecstatic over this news. Lady Pinwood is denying all this, saying that's not true, that didn't happen, how would my child even know about this? To which Posey responds with, oh yeah, in the jewelry box where you kept your wedding ring, you shouldn't have put the dowry in there with it. Violet comes back with a, pretty sure it's illegal to embezzle someone's dowry, don't you think, officer? Violet clears the room. She has the officer step out for a bit. She looks at Lady Pinwood and says, I will not have someone come after you, but here are the rules right here. We are going to claim that she is a family friend of the Earl of Pinwood. She was never your maid. She was a family friend of the Earl of Pinwood. And Lady Pinwood was like, why would I ever say that? Do you want to be arrested as well? Because I will get you there, and I also will ruin your name in this town because people like me more. She agrees. She agrees. Sophie is released. Sophie doesn't have much of a title, but she has more than she did. She has a dowry. So if Benedict and Sophie were to get married, they wouldn't be ostracized. And also, to end this perfectly amazing day, Violet looks at Posey and says, you can come live with me in one of my homes. You do not have to go back to this woman. I will take care of you. We are a loving family. Come to one of my many homes, to which Posey accepts. No longer living with Lady Pinwood. What a great day. There's still more. They leave the jail. Sophie goes to Benedict's house with him, but Violet says that you have to have her back by 7 because y'all are being unchaperoned and that's not okay. So have her back by 7. Benedict's like, well, let me run a bath for you because you don't really smell the best right now because of where you were at, and that is a-okay. Sophie's like, it's almost 7 o'clock. I can't really stay. It's okay. Like, I'll have one when I get back. Benedict responds with, funny, 7 sounds a lot like 9. I'm pretty sure that it was 9 and you just heard incorrectly. She's just laughing at him at this point, and they admit to each other that they both are in love with one another, and Benedict apologizes for the amount of times that he asked her to be his mistress. He understood where she was coming from. He kept crossing that boundary and kept asking, and he's so sorry for what he did. Because he did ask a lot. Benedict tells her that the bath is almost done and we will have you back by 9. Sophie responds with, she said 7. Benedict says, pretty sure she actually said 11. And he winks at her, gets her ready for the bath, laughs, and goes, actually, I'm pretty sure she said 12. She definitely said 12 o'clock. In this moment, she tells him that before she ever met him, she felt him, she anticipated him, and it was almost like magic that they met. And let me just tell you, they do not get her back at the Bridgerton house by 7, or by 9, or by 11, or by 12. Oh yes. Sophie wakes up and realizes how late it is because it's literally 3 a.m. Benedict responds with, "It's okay, we're getting married in 3 days anyway." And that's the end of An Offer from a Gentleman. In the epilogue, we see that Benedict and Sophie have been married for 7 years and they have 3 children. She's also currently pregnant. And then we pan to Lady Whistledown, which I don't think we've ever done before in an epilogue. And we're in Lady Whistledown's thoughts. And she's thinking to herself, I think it's about time I ended this. I think it's about time I am finally myself and show the town who I am. Because remember, even though they revealed who Lady Whistledown was in the first season of the show, no one knows who she is by this point in the book series. So we are going into book 4 still not knowing who Lady Whistledown is. I really enjoyed this book. I know it's problematic and it has some issues, but this one's a fun book. Like, it's just a fun time. It's silly. I really liked this one. Let's get into book 4. New day, new book, new setup. Let's talk about Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, which is the 4th book in the series, but this is what season 3 will be based off of. This is Colin and Penelope's story. Let's start with our prologue. On April 6, 1812, Penelope Featherington knew she was in love, and she knew who she was in love with. Any guesses? Colin Bridgerton, of course. She knew that he did not feel the same way. In fact, she knew from the years 1812 to 1823, he was not in love with her one bit. Let me tell you all about the moment when Penelope first fell in love. Penelope was out on a walk with Lady Featherington and her 3 sisters. I only have 2 pictured here, but Felicity also exists. That's her youngest one. We have Philippa and Prudence as well. She's out on a walk with them and she sees these 2 riders, the 2 riders being Benedict and Colin. Once the 2 riders rush past the Featherington family, a big gust of wind comes and it knocks Penelope's bonnet off her head and smack dab in the face of Colin Bridgerton to where he cannot see, and he ends up falling off of the horse onto his butt. Penelope rushes over, apologizing profusely, saying, "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean for this to happen." And she thought that he was gonna get so mad at her and berate her, but he was just laughing. He literally was just laughing, being like, "This is my luck. This is my luck. Of course this has happened to me." And in that moment, she fell in love with him. She always ended up coming back to this memory, but it kept making her sad because she knew at the end of the day that there was no way Colin Bridgerton would ever fall in love with a girl like her. Now let's jump ahead 1 year, April 10th, 1813. Penelope is now 17 and she's making her debut season. As we have seen from the previous books, we know that Lady Featherington always dresses Penelope up in a hideous shade of yellow. And when Penelope asks her mom, "Why are you putting me in these colors?" she simply replies, "Yellow makes people happy. Happy girls get husbands." I guess that's a known fact. I don't know. I also just want to note that the year 1813 is when Lady Whistledown started publishing her gossip sheet. Very interesting, because remember, at this moment in time, in the book series, nobody knows who Lady Whistledown is. Even if you watch the show and you're like, "I know who it is," you don't know in the book. You do not know. Let's jump ahead 1 more year. It's time for Penelope's 2nd season. Yet again, she's in a horrible yellow dress. Lady Whistledown writes about this yellow dress, saying that it left a sour taste in her mouth. I would also just like to note, because I think this is a fun callback, this was also the moment that Lady Whistledown wrote about Kate Sheffield and how she was wearing yellow and she looked like a daffodil. If y'all remember from the 2nd book, this was actually a bonding experience for her and Penelope, and so I really love that we have this callback in the prologue. Our girl Penelope is a delusional queen because she uses this moment when Kate was called a daffodil to think to herself, well, if Kate was called a daffodil in a ugly yellow dress and she married a Bridgerton, I'm called a sour piece of fruit. I will probably be able to marry Bridgerton in my future. Hopefully, and hopefully it's Colin. The years go by, Penelope has a 3rd season, a 4th season. Both of her sisters, Philippa and Prudence, are married. Felicity is having an amazing time. She has a ton of guys that are currently interested in her during her upcoming season. But Lady Featherington keeps reminding Penelope, don't worry, it took both of your sisters 5 seasons to even find a husband. And if you don't end up finding one, that's okay. You can be a spinster with me, and we can live together until the end of our lives. Penelope hates that idea. Not a fan. Also recounts a moment from the previous book where we have Antony, Benedict, and Colin. Antony and Benedict are picking on Colin and telling him, "You're gonna end up marrying Penelope." And this is when Penelope overhears him say, "I will never marry Penelope Featherington." I know y'all remember that moment because it was awkward and we just talked about it. But the last book did not say what happened when Antony took Penelope home. And now we get to see what he said. Antony explains that Colin did not know that Penelope would end up overhearing this conversation. Obviously Penelope knew about all this and she knows that he is under a great deal of pressure from Violet to get married, but it still hurt. She did not admit that part to Antony. But you know our girl's heart, and after that experience. Lady Whistledown ends up writing that if Penelope Featherington ever manages to marry Bridgerton, it will be the end of the world as we all know it. Interesting. Years pass by and Penelope is kind of embracing the spinster lifestyle. She's also acting as a chaperone for her younger sister Felicity, while Felicity is making her debut in the season. When Colin comes back into town, Penelope actually is so happy over this because if she won't be able to marry him because she is a spinster and he's never had any interest in her, at least he can still be in her life as her friend. 1824, present time. As I was saying, Colin is back in town. Lady Whistledown is reporting this. He just came back from Greece. He's 33 years old. Violet is non-stop badgering him at this point because both of his brothers got married either right before the age of 30 or 30 flat, and he's now a little past that. Lady Featherington, being the crazy woman that she is, makes note that Colin's back in town and that Felicity is on the market. Please mind you that Colin's 33 and Felicity is the same age as his youngest sister Hyacinth. Ew. And Penelope literally says that. She goes, Mom, no. He sees her as a little sister at this time. Like, no. You never know. I have 4 daughters and you would think one of them would at least marry a Bridgerton, and maybe this is the last shot we have. Penelope just rolls her eyes because she knows that her younger sister is going to end up marrying a different guy that has been courting her, and she believes that he is going to propose to her very, very soon. Good news is this conversation doesn't go any farther because Eloise bursts in the door to tell Penelope that Colin is back in town. Penelope already knew this. Obviously, Whistledown beat her to it somehow. But she bursts through the door, she tells her this, and she's like, come, he is so excited to see you. You're like a sister to him. Oh, it's gonna be so much fun. And she's like, great, I would love to. Thank you so much for saying he sees me like a sister. Also, Eloise is 28 years old, and just like Penelope, she is unwed, unmarried, and they're living their spinster lives together. Let's pan to Colin at the Bridgerton house. We see that Colin is hanging out with Anthony and Benedict, and Colin tells them that he doesn't know how long he's gonna end up staying, but at least through the end of this season. Anthony tells him, like, man, you're 33 years old. You need to take this season seriously. Just see what happens. Like, you're 33 years old. Like, we're Bridgertons, you gotta step up. Colin just shakes his head saying, I'm the third brother, like it's not a big deal, it doesn't really matter. And Anthony says, that's true, but are you even happy? Like, I just want you to be happy and you keep leaving, so I don't know if you truly are. It's time for a ball. Penelope is low-key loving the spinster lifestyle. She no longer has to dance. She isn't involved in boring discussions that she could care less about. And she also doesn't have to eat like a bird. Like, she can like full on eat if she wants to. And during this moment, Colin comes up to talk to her while she's eating an eclair and she drops it. And there's a little bit of a funny scene that happens there. I won't go too in depth on it just because it's not really important. But there is a little funny moment where Penelope tells him, like, you could get away with anything if you wanted to. You're Colin Bridgerton. In this moment, Colin compliments the fact that Penelope is no longer in yellow, so he has noticed this. She is in this beautiful green color, and now we have another callback. Please remember the Viscount who loved me when she was hanging out with Kate. Kate told her, I really think green would do wonders for your complexion. And look at her now, she's in green at a ball. Colin is a little taken back by this conversation because he's never realized how easy it is to talk to Penelope and how much he really enjoys their conversations together. This is also when Colin's wondering to himself why she's never had any suitors, because she really is such a fun person. She has a sense of humor and he doesn't understand why no one's ever gone after her. Lady Danbury comes up, she asks Penelope, how much did he pay you to stay with him right now so that he didn't have to talk to me? Come on, tell me how much. They end up admitting that he offered to pay her 20 pounds, and Lady Danbury looks at her and goes, you should have waited until he paid you 25 pounds because he happily would have shelled out that money so that he wouldn't have to talk to me. But that's okay because I have an announcement to make to y'all anyway. I have decided that whoever will uncover the identity of Lady Whistledown, I will pay 1,000 pounds to. And everyone in the room is losing their mind over this. Everyone is chattering and talking about it. But until we can continue on with the ball, Lady Whistledown, we pan to one of her announcements. Now, obviously, this is probably a few days after the ball, but this is how the next chapter starts. We'll go back to the ball after this announcement. She hears about Lady Danbury's plan to uncover her identity, and she goes, game on. Give it your best shot. Y'all will not be able to figure it out. Back to the ball, Nigel pops up, and as soon as Nigel pops up, the two of them look at each other and go, well, now everyone's gonna know about this arrangement because Nigel can't keep his mouth shut. Anywho, everyone in this group is talking about who they think Lady Whistledown might be, and Penelope turns to Colin and she asks him, who do you think it is? And Colin just kind of shakes his head and he doesn't say anything. Penelope knows that he really does have theories and that he is a very smart man, even though many people don't talk about that fact. Many people just say, oh, he's a Bridgerton, he's just so cute, no big deal, there's really not much to him, but he is smart. She takes note of this. He, in turn, asks her, well, who do you think Lady Whistledown is? To which Penelope doesn't miss a beat, and she says, I obviously think it's Lady Danbury, because at the end of the day, paying someone £1,000 to uncover someone's identity is a pretty good cover-up act, and it makes a lot of sense to me. It's in this very moment, because mind you, no one pays attention to Penelope when she's talking. No one heard her say this. The Lady Danbury turns around and goes, Penelope, who do you think it is? And we just have Colin cracking up back there, basically taunting her and smiling, giving her eyes like, go on, tell her what you told me. And normally, like, she would mumble something under her breath and like kind of just back away into the shadows, not be part of the conversation. But since he's looking at her like this, it's almost like he is giving her that confidence to say what she wants to say. And so she looks at Lady Danbury and says, I think it's you. Everyone in the crowd stops in their tracks, looks at her being like, what did you just say? And Lady Danbury goes, I knew I liked you, Penelope Featherington. I knew I did, because I know there are so many people in this room who probably think it's me, but none of them had the guts to say it to my face. Well done, Penelope. And while this is happening, Colin's just standing there with the biggest grin on his face, smiling at Pin, because he is so proud. Guys, and this is just chapter 2. We're already off to a great start. The next day we see that Penelope is invited to the Bridgertons for some tea, and instead of taking a carriage, she decides, you know what, it's actually a kind of nice day, it's drizzling a little bit, I'm gonna walk. Penelope's a little high on life right now while she's taking her walk, and so she thinks, I'm gonna go a different way today. We're gonna cut through the park, it's gonna be amazing, and again, it's drizzling, and she goes, I kind of want to dance in the rain. And so that's what she starts doing. She is by herself, there's really no one in sight, and she just kind of starts dancing in the park, in the rain. And who do you think would come up and see her doing this? Any guesses? Colin does. And he stops her and he goes, were you just dancing in the rain? To which Penelope says, no, of course not, like I wasn't. And Colin responds with, well, that's such a shame, because if you were, I would have loved to have joined you. I've actually never danced here before. When Colin tells her this, Penelope feels another boost of confidence, smiles at him and goes, well, that's unfortunate for you, Colin Bridgerton. To which he responds with, I thought you just said you weren't dancing. I lied. Colin actually starts to make his way towards her, and when she realizes he's actually going to start dancing with her, she questions him. Colin's like, what are you talking about? I just told you I was going to dance with you. To that, Penelope is like, no, what if people see? Like, this is not good. Colin responds with, I don't care what people think, do you? She gets a little sad and she says, people will assume that you are courting me. As soon as she says this, he can see how sad she is over this fact, and he starts feeling an emotion he's never felt before, which is scaring him a little bit. And he tells her, is there a reason we should care if people think that I'm courting you? She says, true, it would bring some humor to the town, but at the end of the day, they're gonna realize it's not true. He immediately apologizes that the town treats her as if she is a joke, and he tells her that he doesn't understand why they treat her this way, because she really is an amazing person. But after he says that, he really has nothing else to say about this scenario, which is a first for Colin, because he always has something to say, and so this even surprises him. To kind of combat the awkward silence that's happening right now, he looks at her and goes, you know what, let's start this day over. Hey Penelope, what are you doing in the park unaccompanied? Like, you should have someone with you. She just says, I'm 28 years old, I'm a spinster. It's not a big deal that I don't have anyone else with me. She even says, I'm the same age as Eloise. Eloise should be married at this moment in time, is what Colin tells her. To which Penelope says, you're 33. You should be married at this moment in time. We're 28. It's not a big deal because you're 33, sir. And this really surprises Colin, because no one other than members of his family have ever said anything like this before to his face. And so he really is starting to slowly see Penelope in a new light. And because he's enjoying this banter so much, they playfully go back and forth for quite a bit more time, until eventually he says, okay, are you ready to go? We need to get there for tea. And she goes, is it because you're hungry? To which he responds, oh yes, I am starving. I really love my family, but in reality, I just go for the food. Lady Whistledown has the most confusing update about who danced with who at the latest ball, and it's just like a weird web of people. I'm gonna read off my notes for this one because it's confusing and really none of them are up here. But if I had to read it, y'all need to know what it is, because it's a lot. So we know that Geoffrey Albansdale was dancing with Felicity Featherington. I didn't mention this earlier, but this is who we're pretty sure is going to end up with Felicity in the end. Like, that is who is like hardcore courting her. Felicity Featherington was seen dancing with Lucas Hotchkiss. Lucas Hotchkiss was seen dancing with Hyacinth Bridgerton. Hyacinth Bridgerton was seen dancing with Viscount Brunswick. Viscount Brunswick was seen dancing with Jane Hotchkiss. Jane Hotchkiss was seen dancing with Colin Bridgerton. And then later that night, Penelope Featherington was seen talking to Geoffrey Albansdale And Lady Whistledown notes that it really just would have been full circle if they would have danced together, but they didn't. Very confusing, and I don't know how that was important information, but there you go. I had to know it, y'all have to know it. Anywho, Colin and Penelope finally make it to the Bridgerton tea. We see that all the ladies are gathered in there talking about Lady Whistledown and all the latest gossip. Hyacinth, Eloise, and Kate are catching everyone up on this. And overhearing them talk about the latest gossip makes Colin question them and say, are y'all sure one of y'all are not Lady Whistledown? Y'all seem to know everything that's going on right now. I feel like someone in this room is Lady Whistledown. They all laugh at him over this, and before we can go forward with our story, we have some family updates for y'all. Now, this family update is honestly not important in this book or the next book, but it does come up later in book 6. We learned that Francesca ended up getting married the same year Benedict did, and she was married very happily for 2 years to an earl. After those first 2 years, sadly, that earl passed away, and Francesca is now a widow. Instead of Francesca moving back with the Bridgertons, she decides to stay where she's at, which is in Scotland. So she is now a widow in Scotland. We will see and learn more about Francesca when it's time for her book. The Bridgertons plus Penelope spend the rest of their tea time talking about all their theories about who Lady Whistledown might be. Their top contenders: Penelope, Eloise, Lady Danbury. Basically, no one actually knows who she is. Colin gets up for a little bit to grab some more food, sits back down, and he says, maybe we would all uncover who Lady Whistledown is if we just turned to our left. Eloise laughs, turns to her right, and goes, is that why you chose to sit by me, just so you can make that joke? Yes, I've been plotting it all lunch. 2 days have passed at this time. Penelope has decided to go visit Eloise. Eloise is not present, but she decides that she'll just go wait for her in the drawing room. No one is around, and she sees that Colin left his journal open in the middle of the room, and so for some reason, Penelope's like, I'm just gonna take a little peek. If he didn't want people to read it, he shouldn't have left it open right here. Like, obviously he wants someone to read it. I'm just gonna take a little peek. No one will ever know. She takes more than a little peek. She kind of gets engrossed and lost in these stories, which are just talking about his time while he was traveling. Colin comes back into the room and he's like, what are you doing right now? What on earth are you doing? This scares her, as it should, because she's in the wrong here. But Penelope just responds with, you should have taken it with you. Colin says, well, where I was going, there was no room for it. It's a really small book. It would have fit anywhere. I'm trying to be polite and not tell you that I went to the chamber pot, but if you must know, that's where I went. And now she's just staring at him like, oh, my bad. At this point, Penelope is so embarrassed, and so she's about to collect all her stuff and just leave, but Colin says, no, I'm just gonna leave. I'm moving out of this house anyway. I'm just gonna go. Penelope is really irritated at Colin in this moment, and she's like, why are you making it so hard for me to apologize to you over this situation? Colin doesn't stop what he's doing. He's still packing up everything, and he just says, why should I? Penelope responds with, because it's the kind thing to do. The kind thing to do. Was it the kind thing to do when you were going through my personal journal? No, it wasn't. It wasn't. Penelope tries to apologize to him. He interrupts her and he takes his index finger and pokes her right in the shoulder. Nothing you can say to justify what you were doing. She tries to respond to this, but while Colin is packing up to leave, he ends up cutting his hand, and so he screams, ow. She is feeling a little faint over the sight of blood. Colin's sitting down trying to tend to his wound with his handkerchief. She's sitting down trying not to pass out. The butlers come in with all the food for them. Colin's raising his other hand so he doesn't see that he's injured. It's like, thank you so much. He doesn't want his mom to know that any of this has happened. And so honestly, they get to bond a little bit on this couch. It is also in this moment that since they're sitting right next to each other on the couch, Colin realizes just how pretty Penelope's eyes are and how he has never noticed it before. He was thinking back about how if anyone were to have asked him yesterday or 5 or 10 years ago, he would never be able to tell them the color of her eyes, but moving forward, he's never gonna be able to forget the color of her eyes. Penelope continues to apologize for the journal, and she genuinely tells him, like, you are such a great writer. This makes Colin's day because no one has ever told him that before. I mentioned this earlier, but Colin in the Bridgerton family is really just known for being the funny one / the cute one. No one really thinks of him as anything other than that. It's a big reason why he keeps traveling. To hear that he is actually good at something that he loves is just amazing to him. This is just the best thing she could have ever said. This moment is really freaking Colin out because he's really seeing Penelope in a completely different light, and he continues to keep seeing her like this. And he is just thinking to himself, what is going on? This is my friend Penelope Featherington. I shouldn't be thinking or feeling this way. But he pushes this thought to the back of his mind And they keep talking. They're having a really good conversation, and Colin asks her, what do you do to fill your life with purpose? I also just want to note that in his head, he is thinking about grabbing her chin and tilting it up to him, but he doesn't because it'd be way too forward. But he is thinking about it in that moment. She tells him that she doesn't really do much. She just reads, she embroiders, etc., but she wishes she could do more. Colin opens up to her during this time and tells her traveling is not enough for him. He keeps doing it thinking that it's going to fulfill something in him, and he enjoys it and he loves what he gets to see, but it's not enough for him anymore. Colin also admits that he believes that since he's been traveling so much, he doesn't really know his family, and his family doesn't really know him. Penelope tells him, you can still change this. You're only 33. You're a man. You have time to change this. Colin argues her a little bit, saying you don't understand, it really isn't that easy. To which Penelope responds with, yes, it is. You are a man who is adored by the town. Try living the life of a 28-year-old spinster for a day and then get back to me and saying that your life isn't luxurious and you can't change it. Penelope gets up and leaves. She's done. He has made her so angry with his statement. For the rest of the day, Colin feels awful. 1, his hand really hurts. 2, he knows that he made Penelope angry. And then 3, he can't stop thinking about her, which is making him feel crazy and insane, and he doesn't know what's happening to him. While this is happening, he remembers that moment from book 3 that we already talked about in the prologue about how she overheard him, and that just makes him feel worse because he's just now realizing like how much his friendship with Penelope means to him. Also, he's starting to think that he likes her a lot more than how he previously believed. So he's freaking out. We also learn that while Penelope has forgiven him for that moment that happened in the last book with her overhearing him, Colin's never forgiven himself for that situation, and so he really still grapples with that. There is a musical event tonight. Colin was not planning on going, but he knows Penelope will be there and he needs to go apologize and he needs to see her and talk to her. So let's go to the event. Pen is sitting there and she's thinking to herself, why did I come? These women are tone deaf. No one else is really here because they're horrible at what they're doing. Why did I show up? She also decides that instead of sitting in the open seats in the back, her and Felicity are going to sit towards the middle, so at least they will have some people while they're performing smiling at them and looking happy instead of being judgmental. Eloise arrives at the event, finds Penelope and goes, I wasn't really going to come, but like I can't miss this. Compare this event to a train wreck that you cannot look away from. That is this musical event for this town. Lady Danbury is sitting right next to them and she tells Penelope, like, I'm just like you. It's why I go to all these events. I want them to look out in the crowd and not see judgmental people. I want them to see people are actually paying attention to them, and they try. You know, they try. Eloise, Penelope, and Lady Danbury are all discussing who Lady Whistledown might be. Lady Danbury says, I think it's Penelope. To which Felicity is like, it's not my sister. It could never in a million years be my sister. Penelope's response is, well, I still think it's you. We can't get away from the fact that I know it's you. And Lady Danbury is just brushing this off saying, you've already said this. Eloise responds with, you're not denying it. Does that mean that you are finally admitting that you are Lady Whistledown? Lady Danbury says, of course not. And if I were Lady Whistledown, I would be a fool to admit it in public. She also mentions that if Lady Whistledown were someone super important in society or obvious, she would have been discovered by now. So it has to be someone that people don't pay a lot of attention to. Make a note of what I'm about to say. Lady Danbury looks at all of them and says, I can promise you right now, Lady Whistledown will not be talking about this event tonight. She won't want to hurt the performers' feelings, and she doesn't care about the rest of the people that are in attendance. The show is about to start, but they all turn their attention to the right because they hear a whole bunch of people groaning, and that is because Colin Bridgerton is like basically pushing through the people in the crowd to try and find the empty seat that is right next to Lady Danbury because that's where he wants to sit. The show is over and Colin goes up to Penelope and he says, let's take a loop around the room, like I need to talk to you. And they both end up apologizing to one another. Penelope tells him, if you want to be different to everyone in the town, you need to publish your journals. They will see you in this new light and they will see you for who you truly are. Colin shakes his head at this because he says at the end of the day, they're just gonna see the title Bridgerton and I won't know if I'm successful because I'm good at what I'm doing or because I'm a Bridgerton. Before Penelope can even respond to this, Eloise runs up to them and is like, what are y'all even talking about? And she stares at Penelope when she asks this, and Penelope says, I can't tell you, I'm so sorry. Eloise is low-key kind of offended because she's like, we don't keep any secrets from one another. Penelope says, it's not mine to share. And Colin just kind of smiles and shrugs, like, the three of them keep chatting, and Penelope tells them that she can't remember having a nicer evening than this. Later that night, we pan to Colin in his bed, staring up the ceiling, thinking to himself the exact same thing. The next day, guess who actually has a gossip column out? Lady Whistledown does. Hint, hint, wink, wink. This column is just talking about how Colin and Penelope were talking all night, but no one really knows what they were discussing, but they were seen talking and making loops around the room with one another. Again, hint, hint, wink, wink. It is now 2 days after the musical event. Penelope's butler comes up to her room and knocks on her door and says, Colin Bridgerton is here to see you. Which Penelope responds with, tell him I need 15 minutes. I will be right down in 15 minutes. The whole time she's just repeating to herself, calm, calm. We need to stay calm. Everything is okay. Just breathe. And she is so excited. She runs down the stairs. She says, hi, Colin. I hope I haven't kept you waiting too long. He immediately goes, I need to talk to you. I wholeheartedly believe Eloise is Lady Whistledown. This is not okay. We need to talk. And she is just in shock saying, why do you even think that she's Lady Whistledown? This makes no sense. I feel like I would know if she were Lady Whistledown. To which Colin responds with, she is always covered in ink for some reason. She keeps writing these secret letters. No one knows where she is when she's writing these letters. And also she knows all of the town gossip. It just makes sense. Eloise is Lady Whistledown. Colin just keeps telling Penelope, I don't know what to do. This is a disaster because she will be ruined if the town learns that she's Lady Whistledown. Penelope is responding with, what do you mean ruined? Like, I don't understand. Colin tells her that Lady Whistledown has been making fun of people for 10 years. Even though they read her gossip sheets every week, she's not a hero to them. In fact, she's a villain because she's been making fun of them. Whoever Lady Whistledown is revealed to be is going to have to leave town. It's going to be so bad. Colin tells her that sometimes a rumor is actually way worse than the truth could ever be, because once a rumor has started, the damage is already done. And he gives her an example that's a little out there and outlandish, but here's the example. He tells her, imagine there was a rumor that I seduced you, Penelope. Everyone would believe that. You would be ruined. And we haven't even kissed. But you would still be ruined because of that rumor. And she's like, her face is red as a tomato, not knowing how to respond, being like, interesting, interesting. Now that he's brought up this example, this is the only thing he can think of in this moment. He's not saying anything because he's just focused on, why did I say that? Why did I give that as an example? Now I can't stop thinking about this example. Penelope looks at Colin and she keeps repeating his name. He's not answering. Again, he's lost in his daydreams right now. She finally gets his attention and she very shyly goes, can I ask you a question? Colin immediately knows whatever Penelope is about to ask him is going to be a bad idea, but he says of course anyway. Penelope looks at him and hesitantly says, will you kiss me? Colin turns bright red and doesn't know what to say in this moment, so Penelope's just like, forget I said anything, I'm so sorry, we're just gonna ignore that I brought this up. Never happened. But before Colin can even get a word in, Penelope shakes her head and said, you know what, no. I am done taking things back because I don't think that people are going to accept me for who I am. I'm still asking you this question. I'm not taking it back. We're leaving it hanging here in the air. Colin is still speechless and doesn't know what to say. Penelope says, it won't mean a thing. We never have to talk about it. I'm not promising you anything. You don't have to promise me anything. I just am 28 years old. I have never been kissed. I could end up dying tomorrow and I will have died never of being kissed. Colin honestly is thinking this through and he's like, no, like I'm not gonna do this, no. And then she looks at him and genuinely just says, please. And he could not for the life of him remember the last time anyone has ever needed him. He doesn't say anything. He takes a step forward, grabs her chin, and kisses her. And it's a good kiss, y'all. It's a good kiss. While this is happening, he's thinking to himself, it has never felt like this for me. What is going on? He stops. He looks at Penelope and he goes, you know, like you can kiss me too. To which she responds with, I don't know what I'm doing. Before we get a little teach me moment, she thanks him, and once she says thank you, he feels so guilty. And he cannot go on. He feels so guilty over this. She can see that he's wrestling with something and she doesn't think it's guilt. She thinks that he is mad or angry. And she just tells him, it's okay, I practically forced you to kiss me anyway. It's not a big deal. He tells her that he needs to go, but his feet literally aren't moving. And he just keeps repeating, I need to go. I need to go, but he's not moving. He's just standing there. And while he's standing there, he starts to say, I didn't, and then immediately stops what he's saying. So he's like, no, we are not going there. I'm out of here. And he starts heading towards the door. This is all because he didn't know what to say. He wanted to tell her that he didn't kiss her out of pity, but this also was freaking him out because he was grappling with these feelings. Instead of saying anything else, he gets to the door and says, I have to go. And he has never been more angry at himself for doing this, and he can't stop thinking about it. Later we see that Colin gets summoned to Violet's house, and while he is waiting to talk to his mother, Eloise pops up and asks him, why were you seen at Penelope's house the other day? To which Colin is freaking out internally, being like, did Penelope tell you about what happened? Do you happen to know about the moment that we shared the other day? Like, what is going on? He asks her, what do you know? How do you know? And Eloise responds with, Felicity told Hyacinth, Hyacinth told me. And in this exact moment, a light bulb goes off in Colin's mind, and he wholeheartedly believes that Eloise is Lady Whistledown. She knows too much. She is Lady Whistledown. Colin yanks Eloise by the arm, pulls her into the nearest bedroom, asks her point blank, are you Lady Whistledown? Tell me now, I need to know. She just laughs in his face thinking, why on earth would you think that it's me? He sees her always covered in ink. He knows that she's writing all these secret letters all the time. And as soon as he mentions the letters, she starts to blush. She starts to blush a little bit. Take note of that. Take note of that right now or the next book. But moving forward, we learn that she is in fact not Lady Whistledown. Speaking of Lady Whistledown, her next column is announcing her retirement. She's done. She's retiring. Lady Whistledown is no more. Everyone is currently talking about this announcement, and honestly, they're really sad that Lady Whistledown is no more. It is the end of an era for them, and all of the women are just saying, where are we going to get our latest gossip? How are we going to know what's happening in the town? And so everyone's just a little sad. Penelope is currently chatting with Hyacinth, and Hyacinth asks her, do you know why Eloise and Colin were shouting at each other the other day? Now this sends Penelope into panic mode because she's like, does she know about the kiss? Does my best friend just know that I kissed her brother? Like, oh no, this is horrible. But again, we're keeping our composure and we're just gonna say, I have no idea. I have no clue what happened. One thing I forgot to mention is we are currently at a ball. That is our setting. Hyacinth leaves Penelope, Lady Danbury appears, and they have a little heart-to-heart. Lady Danbury tells her that it is time she finds a man. She deserves love, she deserves happiness, and Lady Danbury is gonna help her find someone. She's gonna help her. Penelope admits that like she's always had a crush on Colin, and Lady Danbury is sitting there be like, we've known. Everyone in this town can tell, girl, and you've got to move on. If he's not reciprocating, you have got to move on. And Lady Danbury immediately goes, well, speak of the devil, which causes Penelope to whip her head around and see that Colin is making his way over to her. Lady Danbury snaps at Penelope and goes, turn around. Do not let him know that you are waiting for him. No, no, no. He will make his way over here. Do not give him that satisfaction. Once Colin makes his way over to Penelope, he really can't say anything because Cressida literally stops the ball and is like, I have an announcement. Everyone listen to me. I have an announcement. Everyone gathers around and Cressida clears her throat and says, I know Lady Whistledown was just announcing her retirement, but let me tell you that I am the one who announced my retirement because I am Lady Whistledown. And everyone is in disbelief. Their jaws are on the floor. They are like, no flipping way that she is Lady Whistledown. No, no, no. Lady Danbury notices that Cressida is coming towards her and she's like, dang it, I should have left when I had my chance. Cressida comes up to her and says, I would like my £1,000, please. To which Lady Danbury replies with, I don't believe you. You never said we couldn't unmask ourselves, and I am Lady Whistledown. Danbury asks Penelope and says, what do you think? Do you think she could be Lady Whistledown? Make note of this response, ladies and gents. Penelope says, there is no way she is Lady Whistledown because it would break my heart if Lady Whistledown was someone like her. Make note of that once again. And this just humiliates Cressida so much, but she's still standing there, her head's still a little high. And Lady Danbury says, I need proof. If you're gonna claim this and I'm gonna have to give you £1,000, I need proof that you were Lady Whistledown. Everyone is talking about this news whispering, is it actually Cressida? Is Cressida actually Lady Whistledown? Is this what we were missing our whole lives? Like, what is happening? While this conversation is happening, we are panning over to Colin, who's just smiling at Penelope so wide and so proud of her for standing up to Cressida, who has always treated her horribly, if you remember in the previous books. Lady Danbury looks at Colin and says, most people don't ever see this side of Penelope. To which Colin responds, I know. And he's just so proud of her, and Lady Danbury is looking at him being like, maybe this isn't unrequited love. Maybe there are feelings here. Penelope says that this was way too much for one night, so she and Felicity are about to head home, but she has to go grab her carriage. Colin walks out with her, and even though he wasn't able to apologize to her, he at least got to hold her hand for 5 minutes. And that was the highlight of his night. Colin wakes up with the intention of apologizing to Penelope today. That is his sole mission. He walks outside about to head over to the feathering house. He notices that Penelope is leaving. Instead of going up to her and apologizing right then and there, he thinks to himself, where is she going without an escort? So he follows her. He's following her into town. He is mad that she's by herself because this is very dangerous for a woman to be out by themselves, especially in these areas. He follows her to a church though. She walks into the church and she starts counting. She starts counting until she finds the pew that she wants to be in, gets to the middle of it, pulls out one of the prayer books from behind the pew in front of her, puts an envelope in there, and then immediately Colin goes, well, 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 what do we have here, Penelope? And Penelope is like, what are you doing here? How did you know that I was here? What is happening? And he's like, I followed you. What are you doing without an escort? What is going on right now? I do not understand. And I think I need to pray about it. I think I really need to pray about it. And so he leans forward, grabs that prayer book and the envelope inside. He opens the envelope. And what does he find? He finds an article by Lady Whistledown that has not been published yet, announcing that she is out of retirement for one night only to say that Cressida Cowper is not Lady Whistledown. It will never be her. And we have found our Lady Whistledown, ladies and gents. Our Lady Whistledown is Penelope Featherington. I wish the show would have had the reveal like this. I understand why they did it in season 1, but the build-up in the book series was completely worth it, and I wish we would have kept it that way. Let me change out the picture. Let's put the queen in her rightful spot. Colin is in complete shock right now. He's also thinking back about how Penelope was probably laughing at him the other day when he was convinced that it was his own sister. He asks her, why couldn't you just let Lady Whistledown go into retirement? Why are we having to come back right now? And she responds with, I couldn't let her win. Which honestly is very valid because Cressida has treated Penelope horribly throughout the years. I understand where she is coming from. They have since left the church. They are now in Colin's carriage, and they are further discussing this. He tells her that if she submits this Lady Whistledown article and people find out that it is her, and they will find out that it's her because they are searching high and low, she will be ruined. She will be ruined. He can't even bear the fact that she could get hurt during this scenario. Penelope looks at him and says, Cressida wasn't ruined when she made this announcement. Why would I be ruined? And Colin's saying the worst thing that any man could ever say in this moment. Cressida is different. Penelope's heart is shattering right now. She looks at him and she says, I thought you were different. I thought that you saw past this ugly duckling persona that everyone has casted on me and saw that I was more. He says, you're not ugly, you're beautiful. She shakes her head and says, don't say things you don't mean. He keeps repeating, you're beautiful. I don't know how, I don't know when. And he swoops in and he kisses her. He also pulls away and keeps repeating, you are beautiful, Penelope, you are beautiful. And then they keep kissing for a bit. They keep kissing in the carriage for a bit. And if I'm being fully transparent, they do like a little more than kissing, not a whole bunch more, but like a little more than kissing until Colin realizes that the carriage has stopped and the carriage is not moving. And he's like, oh no, we are outside of your front door. Do you think anyone will know that I was here dropping off? Will they recognize my carriage? And Penelope is saying, my mom won't recognize, but the butler let you in the other day. He will know. Colin tells her okay and says, quickly, make yourself presentable. We have got to go in. I gotta make myself presentable too. She's a little shook that he said we, but she's like, okay, no big deal. He steps out of the carriage, gives her his hand and says, goodness sake, Penelope, are you gonna marry me or not? This makes her literally fall out of the carriage and land on her butt. He asks her why she is so surprised by him proposing, and he tells her, like, I do not do what I just did with you to a woman and not propose to her. Like, who do you think I am? We are going to get married. I need to go talk to your mom right away. Penelope is still clearly in shock over this happening, but she's like, all right, like, let's go into the house. They get in there. He's asking where her mother is. She goes, well, it's Tuesday, so they're going to be in the drawing room. They head into the drawing room. Lady Featherington is there along with the rest of the Featherington clan because Tuesdays are the Featherington family meeting days. So everyone's there. As soon as she sees Colin, she goes, Penelope, go to the kitchen and go fetch him some biscuits. Go, go, go. We need to make sure that he is fed. To which Colin says, can she not just ring for someone to make it a little easier? Lady Featherington tells him, well, we could, but Penelope really doesn't mind. Colin looks her dead in the eye and says, I mind. Ring someone else to do it. Honestly, they keep irritating Colin because they ask Colin to sit down, but they won't make any space for Penelope. Felicity offers to get up and for Penelope to have her seat, but Lady Featherington says, no, 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 you've been sick recently. It's not a big deal. And Colin notes, she does not look sick at all. So let me remind you of what we were talking about back in chapter 1, about how for some strange reason, Lady Featherington believes that Felicity and Colin could be a perfect match and get married. So Lady Featherington believes that's why Colin is here. Lady Featherington keeps saying, Felicity, tell him all about your watercolor art. Colin, being a gentleman, is like, how's your watercolor art going? Felicity goes, it's fine. Short and quick, because she also doesn't want to be in this position, and she also understands what's going on with Colin and Penelope. She gets the vibe, even though she's the only Featherington that does. Colin says, honestly, Lady Featherington, the only reason I'm here is to talk to you. Can I get a moment to talk to you? As soon as Felicity hears this, she goes, you know what, Colin Bridgerton, I will go show you my watercolors. I left them in my room. I will be right back. And Colin smiles at this because he knows she's not coming back at all. Everyone else clears the room. They try to get Penelope to come with them, and Colin says Penelope is staying. Lady Featherington is like, okay, Penelope, you can stay, I guess, sure. Colin looks at Lady Featherington and says, I would like to marry your daughter. Lady Featherington just keeps hollering, Felicity, 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 come back. Colin snaps at this point saying, why are you pushing Felicity on me at this point? I don't even know her. She's the same age as my youngest sibling. Obviously, I don't want to be with her. I want to marry Penelope. And her jaw drops to the floor. She was not expecting that anyone would want to marry Penelope. Nonetheless, Colin Bridgerton. Lady Featherington says, of course you can marry her. I just wasn't expecting this, but of course you can. Like, we'd be an idiot not to accept this. Colin looks at her and says, perfect. Well, then I suggest that you treat my fiance way better than you are treating her right now. She deserves respect. And after this horribly awkward moment, Lady Featherington shakes her head, nods it up and down, and says, welcome to the family. It's been 3 days since they've made their marriage announcement. Eloise is talking to Penelope and says, wow, it's such a shame that Lady Whistledown is retired because I just feel like she would love to talk about you and Colin. Penelope says, I mean, honestly, I would love to hear it from her point of view because she once wrote that she would have to retire if Penelope Featherington and Colin Bridgerton ever got together. And Eloise is like, oh my gosh, you're right. What a full circle moment. Not realizing that little fact we learned earlier. Colin comes in the room, they all chat for a little bit, and then Eloise excuses herself, and when she leaves, she shuts the door. Colin goes, she has always been my favorite sister, this is amazing. Penelope doesn't really get the drift until he starts kissing her a little bit, but then she understands. Colin abruptly stops and says, is there any way we can move this wedding forward, or we can just elope? Penelope says, you know, both mine and your mother would not be happy if that were to happen. Also tells her that he stopped kissing her because he wants her right now, and he told her this because he didn't want her to think that she did something wrong or he wasn't into her anymore. He needed that to be clear in Penelope's mind. A few days later, Colin actually decides to go visit Daphne, and Daphne is so surprised that he's here. She's asking him, like, have you already visited Benedict and Antony? Colin responds with, no, what I need to ask you, I don't really want to ask them, which has her a little wary, but she's like, okay, like, I'll listen, why not? He looks her in the eye and says, how did you know? How did you know that you were in love? And Daphne is so taken aback by this question, but also she's so happy. She looks at him, she's like, if you have to ask me this question, you are more than halfway to that point. Like, you are pretty dang close to being in love if you are not already there. But she explains that it's not sudden for most people, like they say. It's not like you've been struck by lightning and just know immediately. Benedict is just bizarre and it just happened to happen to him like that. But for Daphne and Simon, it wasn't immediate. She didn't know as soon as she saw that that was going to be her husband. And so this puts Colin at ease a little bit because he's known Penelope his whole life and he's never felt these feelings towards her until now. The engagement party is full of people whispering because Lady Whistledown just came out of retirement. And Colin is furious. He is straight up seeing red. But before we get to that moment, why don't we pan and see what our girl Lady Whistledown actually wrote about. Please make a mental note of what I'm about to say because Lady Whistledown writes about how Cressida is not her and Cressida was in the wrong for saying this, yada yada yada, but ends the letter by saying, dearest reader, it would break my heart if someone like Cressida were Lady Whistledown, and I hope it would break yours too. As I said, Colin is so mad right now and he keeps trying to come up with an excuse to get Penelope out of there because he needs to talk to her. Penelope is having a mental freak out because this was not supposed to come out for like a few more days. It was not supposed to drop the night of the engagement party. She was still planning on this Lady Whistledown paper to come out, but not on this night. Antony makes a toast and Colin leans over to Penelope and says, after this, we are going to waltz, have our first dance, and once everyone starts to join us, me and you are going to sneak out of the room and we are going to talk about this. But until then, we're not mentioning it. Penelope tries to explain what is going on and Colin's just like, no, not right now. No, no, no. They start dancing. Again, Penelope is trying to speak on it and Colin is like, we have 10 minutes of us dancing. Do not bring up this situation. Which Penelope says, it's our first dance as an engaged couple. Like, people are celebrating us. I should be smiling right now. So smile. You should be smiling right now. He says nothing to that. After the dance, Colin pulls Penelope into the hall and then immediately opens up a small door that takes them up to a staircase, and Penelope realizes that we have now entered Colin's room. He doesn't say anything once they are in the room, and he also doesn't turn on a candle or anything like that, so they are literally just standing in the dark. After a few moments, he looks at her and tells her, you have impeccable timing to have this drop on our engagement night. You know I'm not gonna be able to do anything about this. Like, you have impeccable timing. She admits to him, like, yes, I knew that if I still were to carry along with Whistledown, you wouldn't leave me high and dry. We would still be engaged and get married. I knew that about you. But I promise I was not intending for this to come out during our engagement party. It was supposed to come out in the next few days. Colin, again, is so mad and just looks at her and says, why couldn't you take the perfect alibi and end this situation once and for all? Let Cressida be Lady Whistledown. Penelope keeps saying, I can't let my life's work go to her. I cannot let that happen to me. I know that other people will try and take credit for what I've done, and I'm okay with that, but it can't be Cressida. As soon as she mentions this is her life's work, Colin's whole demeanor just changes immediately. And now he just keeps thinking that she's so witty and amazing and resourceful, and nobody else sees this, and he does sort of understand her point, even though it was poorly executed. He grabs her, holds her in his arms, and this is the moment he realizes that he is truly in love with her. They start kissing for a little bit, and they definitely do a whole lot more than kissing. If you've heard about the mirror scene, I don't know if it's gonna be in the show because the show's not out yet, but I know everyone's been talking about the mirror scene, and you want to read it. That is this chapter, chapter 18. Again, things definitely escalated for them in this moment, but now we are going a few weeks into the future, and we see that Colin and Penelope are now married. Penelope is asking him if they're going to end up taking a honeymoon trip, and Colin says eventually we will. Penelope is like, why aren't we taking one now? You love to travel, and I've really never been anywhere. I really want to go somewhere. And Colin stops her and he goes, we will take one later this year, but if anything comes out about Lady Whistledown, I want to be here to be the one in charge of damage control. I do not want anyone talking about you or your character if I am not here to control the narrative, because that is not fair. Later this night, Colin marks a few pages in his journal for Penelope to read. Now, this is a real 180 for them, because earlier she was wanting to read something of his and he completely told her no, it wasn't ready, she didn't need to see it yet. And he thought to himself, like, she's a good writer. She knows what she's doing. And so he was a little embarrassed to show her, but he opened up, let her read those journal pages, and she was just amazed. She's telling him, like, you are so good at this. You need to publish these. People would love these. Doesn't matter if you're a Bridgerton or not, you are talented. And this is making him feel amazing because, one, she knows what she's talking about. She is a published star, if you will. She's a star. And then two, like, he's not just a Bridgerton brother. He has something else to contribute. Now it's time for our Lady Whistledown lore. We finally get some background knowledge on how Penelope became Lady Whistledown, which I just think is so interesting. Let's get into it. We learn that Penelope started Lady Whistledown during her first season when she was 17 years old. She had a horrible night. She was dressed up in a horrendous yellow dress. People were not nice to her this night. She went home. She wrote down every little thing she saw, everything she heard, everything people said to her, and she just got it off her chest. She didn't even sign it, Love Lady Whistledown, or anything like that, or even her name. It was just purely cathartic to get it off of her chest. She's writing all these letters downstairs while her family is out, and she has to go upstairs for something really, really quick. She comes back down and she notices that her father's solicitor is reading all of these letters. He looks up at her and he tells her, this is amazing. People need to read these. It doesn't matter that you were being a little rude to people in the town. People need to hear this. So he put everything together for her. He contacted the publishing house. He hired the delivery boys, paid them with cash to get them started. He literally handled everything. He also is the reason that Lady Whistledown did not charge her gossip columns the first few weeks that they had them and that they existed. He told her that people need to get hooked on these articles before we start charging them. He's out here making money moves, let me tell you. Also, with the money that she made, because you're probably thinking to yourself, man, she's rich. She is so rich. The solicitor and her changed a few things in her father's will to make it seem like Lady Featherington's late husband left her more money than he did. Because in reality, he really left her nothing. And so the reason that they've been able to have the lifestyle that they've had is because of Penelope. She kept some of the money, but a lot of it she ended up anonymously donating to charity. And that's really all the background of Lady Whistledown. And I just think that that is so cool. Colin asks her in the future, what do you want to do with the rest of the money? Because I know you have it. And she smiles at him and she's like, I think if we ever have daughters, I would like to use this money to give them a really good dowry. I know that you come from money, but with this extra money, I just think that this would make their lives amazing. Colin is just smiling at her in this moment and is just in awe of their life together and what could be their future. And it's a very sweet moment. But you know what? Not everything can be amazing during the honeymoon period. Colin goes out for the day, and the day that he chooses to go out, who shows up at Penelope's front door? Cressida. Cressida shows up, she looks at Penelope and she goes, I know who you are. Penelope is keeping a calm, cool demeanor and is like, what do you mean? I am Penelope, this makes no sense. She goes, did you really think that you could get away with this? Not just being Lady Whistledown, but publicly humiliating me by saying, and I quote, it would break my heart if someone like Cressida Cowper was Lady Whistledown. And as soon as she finishes that statement, 1, Penelope's eyes are about to pop out of her head, and 2, Cressida slams down the latest Lady Whistledown column, where that is the final sentence. Remember I told you all to make a mental note of that? Cressida remembered that conversation. So as soon as she read that article, she knew it was Penelope. Penelope messed up on her last Lady Whistledown. Cressida tells her, since you wouldn't let me get my £1,000 from Lady Danbury, here's what we're gonna do. You need to give me £10,000 in the next 2 days for me to keep your little secret. £10,000 in 2 days? I can't even get you £10,000 in 2 weeks. What do you want from me? Cressida goes, that's not my problem. You either figure it out or I make another announcement to everyone. You have 2 days. She turns around, she leaves. Colin reappears like 3 hours later. He can see that she's visibly shaken up. She explains to him what is going on. Colin basically is pacing back and forth at this moment, trying to come up with a plan. Penelope keeps saying, Lady Danbury really likes me. Maybe she would try and help. Maybe she could lie for us. Like maybe she can do something. And Colin is saying, you really want Lady Danbury to lie for us? Like that's the life you want us to have at this point? Penelope's shaking her head saying, I don't know what else to do. Colin stops in his tracks. He tells her that he has an idea, he has a plan. He's gonna figure it out. To get ready for the ball tonight, because the book reveals that Daphne and Simon are hosting a ball for everyone in the town. Colin is trying to figure out what the heck he actually is gonna do because he doesn't truly have a plan right now, and then all of a sudden a light bulb goes off in his head and he decides to go to Antony's house. We're gonna pan back to Penelope. She's getting ready for the ball. She really doesn't want to go, but she's like, it's okay, I'll be with Colin, I'll walk in with Colin. Everything will be fine. We're just gonna pretend like everything's normal for the day and then figure out where to go from here. And then she gets a letter from the butler from Colin saying, hey, yeah, I actually can't take you to the ball. I will meet you there. Simon's gonna come escort you. Not a big deal. So now she's like flipping the lid, like I have to go in without my husband. The only thing keeping me calm was that Colin was gonna be with me the whole time. Like what on earth? She gets the event. Eloise immediately grabs her and goes, what is going on? And Penelope responds with, what are you talking about? Eloise looks at her and goes, why is Colin being so cryptic with us right now? Colin gave every single person in our family a letter saying, do not leave Penelope's side. Stick to her like glue tonight. Penelope is very much smiling now, even though she is scared for what could happen tonight, but she realizes that Colin put her first and he didn't want anything to happen to her. Colin finds Penelope, drags her away from his family. They go onto the hall and Colin says, here's what's going down. I'm going to make an announcement. You are going to breathe and I'm going to tell everyone that you are Lady Whistledown. Penelope is like, you said that's a horrible idea. I'll be ruined. Like, this is not good. Colin tells her, I told you to breathe. Take a breath. I went to Antony's today. We have his full support. Penelope is thinking, okay, like that's awesome. I'm really happy that he supports us. And Colin's like, no, you don't get it. He's a Viscount. The Bridgerton family is highly respectable, has a lot of power in this town, and he is a Viscount. If we have his support backing us, it will be okay. Not to mention, I also talked to Simon. Please remember that he's a Duke, ladies and gentlemen. So she now has the Viscount and the Duke backing her. If anything goes awry, Colin takes to the stage. He makes the announcement, presenting Lady Whistledown as Penelope. The room is silent. No one is saying anything at this moment in time. And then all of a sudden, Lady Danbury starts to clap. And then the Bridgertons start to clap along, and then slowly everyone in the room is cheering for Penelope. And Penelope's like, they might hate me later, but currently, it's okay. Everything is okay. We get to live happily ever after. And that is how Romancing Mr. Bridgerton ends. Let's go to the epilogue. We don't have too much information to share, but we still need to cover it. In the epilogue, we learned that Colin actually published a book, so he is now an author. And we learned that Penelope is currently writing a novel, and the title is going to be The Wallflower. Because that's what our girl was. Isn't that just so cute? My book also had a second epilogue, but I'm not really going to tell y'all what happened in it because It's covering a lot of the knowledge that we are going to be talking about in Eloise's book. And so I'm just going to cover it there. It'll make a whole lot more sense there. I absolutely loved both of these books. I think that they are in the 4 to 5 star range. Literally loved all of them. I'm excited to see how season 3 is going to go down with Penelope and Colin's story. But that is all I have for this video. Thank y'all so much for being here, especially if y'all have been here for the whole video. Like, y'all are troopers. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up down below and make sure that you are subscribed. If you want to see more content from me in the future, part 3 will be out as soon as I can possibly get it for y'all. Thank y'all for being here and have an amazing rest of your day. Bye everyone.